This guy suddenly wakes up in a world where 7 women are destined to become villains and destroy everything. And the worst part is that each of them has a tragic and brutal ending, but then he discovers he can change their fate, except there's a catch. The only way to save them is to get close to all of them at the same time. So he chooses the most chaotic route possible, building a full harem while trying to stop each of them from falling into darkness. But the more he interferes, the more the world starts spiraling out of control, because these villainesses aren't as simple as they seem, and saving one could put all the others in danger. So now he has to balance emotions, conflicts, and chaos while preventing 7 disasters at once. Because if he fails, it's not just the world that ends, it's everyone along with it. Anyway, let's get straight into it. In a small village square, a group of people had gathered around a girl, saying that she was still trembling. Some people were laughing, saying they wanted to touch her, but the girl became very angry and shouted for no one to come any closer. The protagonist, who had been sleeping, woke up in shock, asking who was yelling at him. However, he realized his head felt like it was about to explode and looked around, asking where all of this had come from. Suddenly, he kept hearing people cursing, with a woman saying that she had bitten someone. Still confused, he opened the door to see what was happening outside. He saw people mistreating the girl, saying that she was nothing more than a slave. On top of that, they kept saying that she was full of tricks, and that was why Li Yuanyi hated her. The other people standing around started laughing, saying that Li Yuanyi was not kind at all, and questioning whether there could be any family slave more devastated than that one. She could barely imagine suffering more than an animal, and even the finest woman would go mad. Another woman said she thought that was very wrong because she did not treat her slaves that way. The protagonist, watching all of this, questioned whether it was possible that he had transmigrated into the novel, because if that were true, then the woman being mistreated was one of the slaves of that bastard who got eliminated. One of the main women named Kufu. The name of the story was My 7 Wives Are All Villains. In his past life, he had skipped school and pretended to be sick just to read it in 3 days and 2 nights. And now, maybe he had spent so much time reading it that he was dreaming about the story. He looked at her and thought that woman was even purer than he had imagined. Suddenly, someone approached him and called him Li Yuanyi, saying that he had finally woken up. The protagonist could not believe that he was that scumbag who got eliminated in the story. The man handed him a piece of wood, saying that the runaway slave was there and had been caught, and that now he needed to go over there and deal with her. But the truth was that the protagonist felt disappointed because the scumbag he had turned into only lasted 3 days in the main story. Suddenly, he noticed a very bright glow coming toward him. A small robot introduced itself to him, calling him host, and said that its surname was Do and its full name was Doubting, and that it would now be the protagonist's system, saying it was a pleasure to meet him in person. It welcomed the protagonist to the world of the novel My 7 Wives Are All Villains, and, since the story had already begun, Doubting said it would keep its explanation brief. It pointed out that the protagonist had become the disposable male character, Li Yuanyi, with the same name as in the main story, and that his objective was, the protagonist interrupted the system, asking whether the story was not a little wrong, because he had become a disposable male character redeeming villains. Doubting said there was no time to explain everything now. In short, if a villainess's corruption level reached 5 stars, he would die instantly. The main female character's corruption level was rising very quickly and was currently at 3 stars, and if he did not act right away, he would be eliminated. A man who was there, holding an egg, shouted at the protagonist, asking what he was waiting for, telling him to watch how it was done, and threw the egg at the girl's head. Yuanyi grew irritated by the situation and asked the man what he thought he was doing. The man was startled, and the protagonist stepped in front of the woman, saying that he would very much like to see who would dare mistreat that girl again. Another woman standing in the crowd watching was impressed to see that he was protecting Kufu. The system became desperate, telling the protagonist that the girl's corruption level was still rising very quickly. Yuanyi could not understand why her corruption was still going up when he was protecting her. Suddenly, he realized he had been incredibly stupid, because he had always been seen as that woman's greatest enemy, a piece of trash who had abused her for years, and now he was suddenly being nice, which meant anyone would feel resentment and be extremely suspicious upon seeing that. Because of that, he needed to change strategies. He looked at everyone and, in a threatening voice, declared that he was the one who dealt with his women, so he did not need worms like them interfering in the matter, and ordered everyone to leave immediately. People started laughing, saying they already knew there was no way Li Yuanyi could change so much all of a sudden, because apparently he just wanted to deal with that woman himself. Another agreed, saying they might as well leave because that girl was going to suffer more than ever. The protagonist kept shouting for no one to go near that woman, dead or alive, because she belonged to him, and if anyone dared touch her again, they would have to face him. Kufu remained silent, looking at him without understanding the situation. Yuanyi looked at her and called out to her, making the girl flinch and prepare for punishment. But Yuanyi only told her to stand up and go back home. Doubting said her corruption level had stopped rising and congratulated the protagonist. Yuanyi yelled at her, telling her to stop wasting time and get up already because he did not have that much patience, but she was clutching something in her hand so hard that it had started to bleed a little. The girl became uneasy but decided to obey her master. The other woman from before said that the protagonist was rather interesting. As they walked, Yuanyi kept speaking harshly to the girl, telling her to move already because if she kept dawdling, he would punish her right there. But the girl was already exhausted, with sweat running down her face and her breathing ragged, and she ended up collapsing to the ground. He also took a deep breath and said that she was pitiful and, smiling, said that, as a true young master, he would help her the right way. He picked her up and carried her into his house and asked, doubting, whether there was not some kind of beginner package or something like that. The system said that he had 10 starting points that could be used to buy something in the shop and asked whether he was interested in purchasing anything. But Yuanyi thought the system had no shame at all offering only 10 starting points, because apparently he would have to ask whether there was a 6 yuan first top-up gift. Still, he decided to open the system shop and realized he currently could not afford very expensive things. So he bought a set of women's clothes because that would be a great attempt to redeem himself with Khufu for the actions of his former self. A long time passed, and the protagonist asked why she still had not woken up, because 3 days had already passed and she was still sleeping. Suddenly, Khufu woke up, and doubting notified Yuanyi. He felt relieved that she had finally gotten up. He went to her side and sat down, saying that he had just prepared that and asked her to drink it quickly. Khufu became frightened, and the system warned that her corruption level was rising and that she was probably imagining that the protagonist was trying to poison her with it. Doubting said he must not break character and needed to act quickly. Yuanyi took a deep breath and began speaking firmly to her, asking whether she did not want it and ordered her to drink it, while he still had patience because he did not want anyone dying in his house, especially from hunger. He handed the bowl to her, calling her useless, and said that if she did not drink immediately, he would throw her out. As soon as she finished drinking, she asked him what other tricks he had now, but the protagonist shouted at her, saying that she had a lot of bad luck. Khufu thought that this time Yuanyi had been knocked out because of her, and that if it happened again, she certainly would not survive. She thought that if only she could be eliminated in peace, it would be fine, but she could not even imagine how much she would be punished before finally dying. But all of that was her own fault for having restricted her power. She thought maybe it would be better to end all of this herself. But Yuanyi threw the clothes on top of her, asking what she wanted to end, and told her to get that out of her head because if she did that, he would drag her body outside and punish her all the same. He placed a plate of food on the table and explained that those clothes were for her to wear and that food was for her to eat, and asked whether she was grateful to her young master. While he was doing all of that, a serpent was watching his every move. The snake began to dissolve, thinking that apparently he seemed as cruel as ever and had not changed at all. The snake was that same woman from before. She returned to her normal form outside and questioned why she had felt that the protagonist had become someone completely different that day. However, she thought that did not matter right now, because as long as he kept treating that girl badly, she would always have a chance. Other girls pass near Yuan and tell her that they are going to buy some fruit. She smiles and says that it is fine. Meanwhile, inside the house, the protagonist tells his slave that that is all she deserves to eat, and explains that when he was a child, he took care of Wang Kai and gave him 4 dishes and a soup as a normal meal. On top of that, he tells her to look at her own clothes because they are all worn out, and people will think that he is not demanding at all, that even a trash picker could be a slave. And that is disgusting. He tells her to go change quickly so she will not disgrace the members of the Li family. Besides that, she needs to eat all the food, because if she leaves even a single bite behind, he will throw it on top of her. Doubting warns that her corruption level has gone up by 1 point, and the protagonist becomes furious about that, because if he is rude to her, that does not work either. So why is she so hard to deal with? The system scolds the protagonist, saying that the truth is that he was not rude enough, which is why she still imagines there may be some kind of poison in the food. Yuanyi holds a piece of meat in his hand, thinking that that girl is far too suspicious, and questions just how awful her former master was. He says that there is a chicken drumstick in that soup, and that he had not noticed it, then starts eating, and asks whether she really thinks she deserves to eat that. He points out that the food tastes very good, but just looking at her made him feel disgusted and ruined his appetite. He leaves that place and slams the door, saying that he is already tired of looking at her face. Khufu realizes that there truly is no poison in that meal, jumps up in a rush, pounces on the piece of meat he left behind, and starts eating. She quickly devours all the food and even starts crying. Doubting tells the protagonist that her corruption level has gone down for the first time, and that he did really well. The protagonist thinks that girl is very beautiful and questions how that heartless scumbag from the original story managed to treat her with such cruelty. On top of that, he has the same taste as the protagonist, which shows that the original story's author is also a scoundrel. He looks at the still water beside him and questions why he can barely see his reflection, and apparently he really is a piece of trash. The system says that out of the 6 million words in the story, the words physically describing Li Yuanyi amount to only 52 words. According to the monitoring it carried out, the protagonist skimmed past that page in zero point 0.6 seconds at 4:30 in the morning yesterday. If he cannot remember it, then with that kind of reflection, he is not much of a person. The protagonist asks who would waste time reading about a disposable character. Doubting tells him that the current state of the original story's character is that he has not bathed for 3 months, making Yuanyi asks whether he could spend 1 point to buy some shampoo. Doubting says yes and points out that if he buys shampoo now, he gets a towel and a body wash for free. Yuanyi is satisfied with the deal and buys everything. Before going to take a bath, he points out that he also saw the special offer for the medical kit for 1 point and asks the system to deliver it to him. Doubting explains that the items he has bought in the shop so far are for lifetime use. Before opening the bedroom door, Yuanyi asks the system whether dinner has already been delivered. Doubting says yes, and that it has been about half an hour already. Yuanyi kicks the door, saying that she has probably already finished eating, but as soon as the door opens, she is still frightened and trying to eat while her body trembles. Doubting points out that he forgot to mention it because she is still badly injured, so it is not very easy for her to eat. The protagonist tells her to sit down and keep eating and, with a smile on his face, approaches her, saying that if she leaves any food behind, she already knows what will happen. Khufu becomes even more frightened and starts eating quickly. She looks at him and thinks that apparently he found a new way to punish her. Yuanyi moves even closer and tells her to look at him, then starts rubbing something onto her leg. The girl is startled, thinking that she knew it, and that he is probably putting poison on her body, so he is the same as always. Yuanyi asks whether that hurts, because that is the point. But in truth, he had forgotten that there is no use telling her that it is disinfecting alcohol. So, it is better to let her think that it is just another form of punishment. Khufu's eyes fill with tears and her hand trembles. But the protagonist tells her to keep eating and not dare stop. He grabs her and orders her to give him the hand that is injured. He points out that every place that is wounded has to hurt at least once. A little while later, he stands up and says that he has already finished applying the medicine to her injuries, so he is leaving. As soon as she hears the word medicine, she is stunned, asking herself whether what he had really been putting on her was medicine and not poison. She asks him to wait, but the protagonist simply slams the door again. She becomes confused because that is actually his room, not hers. Outside the room, Yuanyi is sneezing and shivering from the cold because he did not imagine that it would be so cold there during the night. But he says everything will be fine and that if he can endure that night, it will definitely be worth it. He thinks that when Khufu wakes up in the morning and sees that her wounds have healed, she will realize that what he put on her was not poison meant to punish her, but something to help her recover. That way, her corruption level will definitely drop by a lot. Doubting says that he had also forgotten to explain a little better and begins to say that the scoring system is divided into 2 aspects: corruption and affection. A 5-star corruption level means complete corruption, and a 5-star affection level means complete affection. One level is roughly equal to 3,000 points, which means that every 3,000 accumulated points can raise the affection level by 1 star. However, the points are used when he buys something from the shop. His starting points were only 10 and had already dropped to 7 after a few purchases. Yuanyi asks whether there is anything for him to be worried about because he is being very good to Khufu, so the points will definitely be in his account by the time she wakes up in the morning. Doubting agrees with him, saying that it was a good strategy. But on the next morning, the protagonist wakes up completely furious, saying that that girl is an ungrateful traitor. He starts running in circles, saying that it makes absolutely no sense, and asks how it is possible because he should have scored a 9 or even a 10 for what he did for her yesterday, yet he did not even get a single lousy point. Doubting tells him not to panic, because they made pretty significant progress over the last 2 days. They will definitely be able to improve his relationship with Khufu soon. Suddenly, he stops walking and smells something strange, saying that he reeks terribly. He looks at himself and says that the original Yuanyi must have been filthy, and it is no wonder he did not get any points, since pretty girls do not like smelly men. He looks at Doubting and asks whether, if he were Khufu and saw a handsome, clean, gentle, and attentive guy caring only about her, would his heart not start racing? The system agrees, and he runs off to grab his things, saying that now it is time for a bath. He buys some personal hygiene products for 1 point, Sometime later, he opens the door and Khufu is startled again, but as soon as he enters, she is surprised and says that he is. The protagonist cuts her off, asking whether he looks charming, but Khufu closes herself off and stays on guard. Yuanyi asks why she moves so far away from him. Doubting warns that this is not good at all because her corruption level has started fluctuating again. The protagonist thinks this has to be some kind of joke and that now there is nothing else he can do because he truly does not think he is some movie star, but he is sure he is a bit above average, so why is her corruption level rising again? The system points out that according to the calculations it made, her corruption level will rise at a rate of 0.001 per minute and asks the protagonist to do something quickly. Yuenyi thinks that actually makes some sense because if a very beautiful woman suddenly threw herself at him out of nowhere, he would probably think she was trying to steal one of his kidneys, so maybe that is the only way. He slams the door and starts yelling at her, asking why she is still wearing those rags, questioning whether he did not give her new clothes. He asks what is going on and whether the clothes are not to her liking. He steps a little closer and keeps yelling, saying that every time he says something, she makes that discouraged face, and just looking at it already makes him feel sick. He asks whether she is trying to provoke him. Could it be that she thinks that by dressing like that, she will make the whole tribe say that the Li family is far too stingy? Yuanyi touches her shoulder and realizes that she is still trembling and cannot make eye contact. He thinks that the post-traumatic stress disorder is still very strong. That disorder is a mental condition acquired after living through or witnessing something very shocking or painful. She looks at him, but Yuanyi yells at her, asking what she is staring at and orders her to go change clothes right away. Khufu is confused and frightened and, with a trembling voice, says that she should be going to make the food. But the protagonist grabs her hand, saying that she must not cook, because even a dog would throw that food away. Yuanyi shoves her, saying that she does not need to cook and only needs to stay quietly at home, reflecting on her actions. He runs out of the room thinking that he even used his good looks, so how did she not give him even half a point of affection level? But Khufu is still completely confused by all of that. She walks to the door and stands there looking out. She looks at the clothes she received and remembers that he had protected her and had even given her some food as soon as she woke up. She holds the clothes and thinks that she is a runaway slave who left her master to die and, after being captured, thought that she really would be punished to death right there. So she cannot understand why her master did not punish her and instead even gave her good clothes. She looks at her still injured hand and thinks that if he had truly wanted to punish her, he would have simply beaten her a few times with some whip to vent his anger. So maybe it could be that he is really worried about her, since even the wounds on her hands seem much better than they were the night before. But her negative thoughts appear and tell her to stop imagining such things, because the guy who mistreats her every single day did not mistreat her for just one day, and that does not mean he could care about her. She comes back to reality and thinks that it is indeed impossible, because someone's nature does not change after a blow to the head, so the protagonist must be planning some new way to punish her, since the Li family was never known for being decent people. She looks at the clothes he gave her, thinking that she cannot fall into whatever traps he is planning for her. Her negative thoughts tell her that she is right and needs to stay on maximum alert all the time and not trust anyone so easily. Outside, the protagonist says that women are always like this, and maybe she will change clothes that day and feel a little happier, making the affection level rise. Doubting analyzes the situation and apologizes, saying he did not want to give this news, but her corruption level went up by 0.03 points. Yuenyi falls to the ground crying, thinking that women and petty men are the worst things to deal with. He points out that that job is impossible and that he truly does not care anymore and is going to give up. Doubting tells him to calm down and not get so nervous because if he gives up, then both the system and he will be eliminated. Yuanyi puts on a seductive expression and says, "Hey, little girl, it is not your lucky day to have run into me here. Serve me properly and I will give you a quick and painless death." He asks the system how his performance was and whether he was cruel enough. Doubting tells him he was more than good enough, saying that no one knows how much effort he is making behind the scenes not to break character. He tells the system that they need to do this for survival. Yuanyi returns home carrying some firewood, saying that he is back and asks where everyone is and where that girl has disappeared to again. She appears once more with a trembling voice, saying that she is right there. He throws the firewood onto the ground, telling her to go take a bath and change into the clothes he gave her because she lives filthy all the time and it is already disgusting. He asks what is going on and whether she really did not like the clothes he chose for her. Khufu crouches down to pick up the firewood he threw on the ground, trying to explain the situation, but the protagonist interrupts her, asking whether he told her to gather the firewood. He points out that if she keeps doing that kind of thing, her wounds may open up again, and he will have to spend more money to treat her one more time. Still not understanding exactly what her master is trying to do, she asks what she is supposed to do. The protagonist puts the firewood in the fire and tells her to go bathe already because she needs to be completely clean for him. She agrees and says that she will do it immediately, but keeps thinking whether he is really the same Li Yuanyi, because she still finds it impossible that he changed like that since he would never change. After heating the water for her, he pours it into the bathtub and tells her to go bathe. She remains a little hesitant, and the protagonist keeps saying that other people's slave girls have better bodies than hers and prettier faces too. They act much more boldly because all he has to do is jump outside for a moment and he can see all of that, so who would have any interest in looking at her like that? Doubting tells Yuanyi that his weirdness does not seem like an act. The protagonist gets ready to leave and tells her to hurry up with the bath, then asks the system how he did. The system says he is doing very well. Khufu starts taking off her clothes to get into the water and thinks that her master is ordering her to bathe. She gets into the bathtub but feels a little upset, thinking that it means that that night she will have to do that again. Meanwhile, outside, Yuanyi says that just one Khufu is already too much for him to handle and the other 6 will not be easy at all. In the beginning, he cannot let them know about the other relationships he will have. Otherwise, there is a great risk that the corruption level will rise, which means this is a matter of life and death. Doubting points out that in order to maintain world peace, they have no choice but to stay firm in the mission. The protagonist complains, saying that he always thought transmigrating into books was about getting overpowered abilities to act cool and turn everything around, not about being a complete idiot. Doubting tells him to look at the situation from another angle. After he conquers all 7 villainesses, he will have the 7 strongest warriors in the world by his side, and that is incredible enough power to show off anywhere. Yuan Yi agrees, saying that being an idiot is part of the journey, because he has a much greater goal at the end of all this. A little while later, Khufu says that she has finished bathing, and as soon as the protagonist looks at her, he is impressed. Feeling a little shy, she asks whether she looks strange in the new clothes. He keeps up his act and says that she looks acceptable, but the truth is that he is completely enchanted by her beauty, thinking that he will spoil her as much as he can and earn more points to buy her a lot of clothes. That way, he can buy every kind of outfit. But Khufu thinks that, in truth, her master did not like her. Yuanyi says that he is a little sleepy, so he is going back to the room to lie down, and tells her that after she finishes cleaning, she needs to go to his room and stand guard by his side while he sleeps, because her job is to protect her master properly. He holds her face and says that if he wakes up in the middle of the night and she is not in the guard room, he will rip off all her clothes and leave her tied to the bed. She gets a little frightened and says that she understands. He replies that this is much better and goes to the room. Doubting says that the corruption stopped, and apparently the act worked, and the approach they were planning is the right one. Before going to lie down, Huenyi tells her to leave the buckets and the other heavier things where they are because if she does something stupid and her injury gets worse, he will have to spend money on medicine for her again. Khufu is surprised, thinking that her master is afraid she will get hurt or die because he will have to spend money. But even so, she thinks that is actually a little good. She falls to her knees on the floor and starts crying, saying that even though her attempt to escape failed, at least she is still alive, and incredible as it seems, life is not as hard as it used to be. Yuanyi and Doubting are watching that, and the system congratulates the protagonist, saying that her corruption level dropped considerably and because of that he earned 10 reward points. Because of that, the system shop unlocked the level 2 shelf, and more products are now available. Yuanyi hugs the system, saying that he finally got a good result. Doubting tells him he did a good job and that if they can keep following that routine, they will definitely be able to maximize Khufu's affection level. The protagonist thinks that she is a silly girl because he is definitely not the same as before, and one day she will be able to understand that he truly wants what is best for her. That way, she will be able to smile happily. Later that same night, the protagonist hears some noises and wakes up. As soon as he looks at Khufu, he realizes that she was taking off her clothes. He is surprised and asks what she is doing. Khufu becomes embarrassed and asks whether he had not said that he wanted her to sleep with him. Yuanyi backs away from her a little and asks when exactly he ever said that kind of thing. He covers his nose and asks since when he started getting so worked up, because he does not want to embarrass himself with a nosebleed. Doubting warns that her corruption level has started rising again. The protagonist tries to act arrogantly and yells at her, asking whether he has been too kind to her, and tells her to go look in the mirror, because her body is too thin and even her ribs are showing, and points out that only dogs like chewing on bones. But in truth, he was thinking that he is a very decent guy. Yet there is a beautiful woman throwing herself at him. So how is he supposed to resist that? Because this cannot be happening, since he is not a castrated man. So she cannot provoke him like that because there is a proper process to be followed. Khufu asks her master whether all those recent actions of his do not mean that he wants to. Yuanyi cuts her off and asks whether that is how she interpreted things. She asks what interpret means, but the protagonist does not have much patience to explain the situation and yells at her, saying that she will sleep on the bed and he will stay on the floor. That way they will sleep separately, and he tells her not to provoke him anymore. He pushes her onto the bed, but Khufu asks if she is really going to sleep on the bed. Yuanyi says yes because she gave him a huge scare, and maybe he twisted his back a little. Besides, the bed is very soft, so he will sleep on the floor. Yuanyi thinks that even if he is not a eunuch, he is still afraid of making some wrong move when they start getting closer and accidentally making the corruption level max out. She asks whether they were still going to do that night, but Yuanyi says no and tells her to be quiet and go to sleep. He throws himself onto the floor and she keeps looking at him, thinking that this is great because her master has already fallen asleep. She also thinks that it is a little strange, since she had been feeling more at ease that night. She turns to the side and also goes to sleep. During the night, she starts dreaming about the things that happened to her. The village where she lived was set on fire and her family members only screamed at her to keep running and not look back. Khufu tried to run as fast as she could, but something struck her, making her fall to the ground badly injured. In that way, she was captured and humiliated, and the only thing she could do at that moment was grieve over everything that had happened. Because of those dreams, she starts writhing and trembling in bed, making some noises as if she were crying. Yuanyi wakes up because of the noise and calls out to her, asking if she is okay. Doubting says that it is very hard to wake someone who is having a nightmare. The protagonist goes to the bed and asks the system whether it can see what she is dreaming about, wondering whether it might be something from her past, because if that is the case, he has an idea of what it is. Doubting says that unfortunately it cannot do that. However, her corruption level has already been rising for a while and shows no sign of stopping. Yuanyi keeps looking at her and says that she is a girl from the noble fox-woman bloodline who was sold as a slave. Since childhood, she has suffered unprecedented humiliation and abuse, so it is very easy to imagine what she is dreaming about. Yuanyi wipes away her tears and thinks that the original material mentioned that the powers of a fox-woman, specifically Khufu's, were partially sealed because of the traumas of her childhood, which is why she became someone that anyone could mistreat. He notices that the wound on her leg still is not fully healed. Yuanyi takes out his medical kit again and starts cleaning her leg, thinking that if he applies more medicine, it may heal faster. While he is cleaning the wound, she feels pain and curls up even more, trembling as she asks herself what he is doing to her, since it hurts far too much. Khufu becomes suspicious and thinks that during the day her master told her to eat, and during the night he slept on the floor so that she could sleep on the bed, and maybe all of that was just so she would lower her guard so he could poison her. As soon as the protagonist returns to his bed on the floor, she opens her eyes, thinking that if he is going to kill her, then he should do it properly and stop with all that ceremony. She thinks that what he put on her leg hurts too much. Even a dead body would have woken up. She takes out a piece of glass that she had hidden under some cloths and looks at the protagonist who was sleeping beside her. She approaches him with the glass in her hand, thinking that he just punished her while she was asleep, so she cannot be blamed for what she is about to do now. But suddenly she feels a slight itch on her leg and when she looks, notices that the wound is healing very quickly because it has already formed a scab. Khufu sits on the floor, looking at the wound on her leg and remembers that he had said a little earlier that the thing that hurts a lot is medicine. Because of that, she feels happy, and the affection level rises a little. The next day, early in the morning, Doubting starts shouting at the protagonist, telling him to wake up immediately because something bad happened, and points out that the real protagonist has transmigrated there as well. Yuanyi, still a little sleepy, asks who he is talking about, and the system says it is the original protagonist of the story, called Shi Tianrui. The system says that it detected energy fluctuations during monitoring and, after tracing the source, confirmed that Xu Ding brought Shi Tianrui into the story. Yuanyi becomes desperate, thinking that the original protagonist of that story is very handsome, good at dual cultivation, and also very smooth with words. So what is he supposed to do if that guy is there? Doubting explains that it truly did not expect him to move so quickly and that, with the abilities of a male lead, the new protagonist will surpass Yuanyi's progress in a short time. The protagonist says that dealing with Khufu is already very difficult, not to mention that this new guy is definitely the true protagonist of that story, while he is just the trash who abused Khufu, and that changes everything in his plans. The system says that their top priority is to rush and fully win over Khufu, but Yuanyi says that unfortunately they cannot speed things up with her because that would backfire terribly, as the system itself has already witnessed. Doubting continues panicking, saying that if the main protagonist completes the mission of winning over the 7 main women before Yuanyi does, then they will be completely obliterated by the main system. The protagonist thinks about that for a bit and gets an idea, saying that actually there is no reason to panic. After last night, he managed to earn 30 points, which means his strategy is working. Proximity gives him a slight advantage, so he does not think they need to be that desperate. Besides that, he is the disposable character who was supposed to have been eliminated but was not, which means the course of the story has already changed. Yuanyi says that if Shi Tianrui wants to get close to Khufu and try to win her over, he will have to go through him first. Doubting says that is right and points out that it had been so desperate that it forgot to mention that the protagonist had earned the points. Yuanyi says he can already see that just by looking to the side. However, he states that they need to take it slowly, one step at a time, and for now he only needs to add being careful of Shi Tianrui to his list. While the protagonist was talking to the system, Khufu was already awake and thinks that her master might be talking to someone since she is hearing his voice. Yuanyi walks over to her and gently pats her on the head, calling her little fox and good girl, telling her to sleep well, rest, and wait for him there inside the house. Yuanyi leaves the room and she sits up thinking about the fact that she was called little fox and good girl. A short while later in the jungle on the turbulent battlefield where the prestigious young man made his debut, Yuanyi surveys the surroundings and thinks that next time he can bring Khufu and teach her a beast attack. That way he can appear as a hero, saving the damsel and get slightly injured in the process. And when she sees that he was willing to risk his own life to save her, maybe things will change. But suddenly he hears a noise and gets startled, asking who is there and telling them to show themselves. Yuan appears, telling him not to attack because they are from the same tribe. She is accompanied by two other people and says that from far away she had been hearing something that sounded like the wailing of a ghost or the howl of a wolf in the forest, but it turned out to be only the protagonist singing. She says that she saw him in the square last time and asks whether his name is Yuan Yi. The protagonist greets her, saying that he thought there was no one in the forest, so he was singing a little to kill the boredom and asks whether she got scared. The other two girls standing behind her begin talking among themselves. The one in white asks whether he is not Yuan Yi, and the one in black says that it is the same name. However, they had heard that he was ugly and sadistic with grimy skin, but in truth he is handsome and even a little attractive. Yuan Yi is happy to hear that and thinks that they could speak a little louder if they wanted. Yuan says that the protagonist has changed a lot compared to what he was before and thinks that he is definitely a completely different person. Yuan Yi asks what their names are. Yuan introduces herself by name and says that they were there to pick some fruit, offering some to the protagonist and saying that they are very sweet. The young woman in black also says her name is Aning, and the one in white is Zhang Shui Shui. The protagonist refuses the fruit, saying that he does not need it, but Yuan insists, saying that they picked a lot on the way to the mountains and asks him to at least try one. On top of that, she says that he can also take some home so his slave can try some too. Yuanyi switches into actor mode and says that Khufu is only a mere slave, so why should he let her taste anything since she does not deserve that? He thinks that if he is going to act, then he has to fully commit and cannot even think about failing because that is what a truly good actor does. Doubting congratulates him, saying that he is doing very well and being very careful. Yuan calls to her two companions saying that they are leaving now and says goodbye to the protagonist. He says goodbye back and keeps looking at that woman. As soon as she leaves, he looks at the system and asks whether he is really getting a little forgetful, wondering whether there was really such a beautiful woman named Yuan in the original story. Doubting asks why the protagonist is asking that, because apparently none of the 7 main women he needs to conquer is named Yuan. On top of that, the system says that the protagonist is now neat and clean and looking quite presentable, so his charm probably attracted other female characters. Yuan Yi starts laughing and says that now that the system mentions it, he thinks so too. Sometime later in the kitchen of his house, the protagonist is complaining that making food is always annoying. On top of that, he thinks the flint is broken and does not know how to start the fire. He calls the system and asks whether it has any kind of mirror to sell. Doubting hands him a lighter and charges him 1 point. Yuan Yi is delighted, saying that it's time to show that bunch of country bumpkins the great invention of the modern age called a lighter. Khufu opens the door asking what that noise coming from the kitchen was, nearly scaring the protagonist to death. He stands up laughing and says that it is just him, but by accident he ended up stepping on the lighter. He asks what she is doing there and the girl says that she came there to cook. The protagonist says that it is fine, telling her that she can make her food, but he is practicing how to light the fire and asks her not to get in the way. She sits in the corner of the kitchen and just watches. Yuan Yi gives it everything he has, rubbing one piece of wood against another to try to start the fire, yet he gets no result at all, thinking that making fire by friction is a little harder than he imagined. But what was really worrying him was Khufu's corruption level rising, because he was embarrassing himself so badly in front of her. Khufu walks up to him and asks him to let her try. Using her magic, she manages to light the fire easily, leaving the protagonist surprised. With a shy look, she says that even though her power has not fully recovered yet, she can still summon a small spark. The protagonist is stunned, thinking that she probably used magic because he never imagined that things like that truly existed. On top of that, he does not know how the law of conservation of energy works in relation to that. Even though he already knew that this world was a place where those kinds of things were possible, seeing it with his own eyes for the first time left him impressed. Yuenyi touches her dress and asks whether that hand gesture she made to use magic needs some kind of incantation. She explains that it is not exactly like that because all she has to do is concentrate her power and align it with her will. Yuenyi says that is amazing and asks whether that is how she always lights the fire and whether her fingers get burned in the process. The girl is a little surprised by that kind of question and says no. The protagonist keeps asking curiously whether using that ability consumes anything and whether he can learn it, and if so, how he can do it. On top of that, he would also like to know whether she uses only fire, or whether she can also use other elements like water, ice, or lightning. He's so excited that he keeps praising her, saying that seeing that in person for the first time was incredible, and that it must be sustainable. On top of that, he thinks that with that kind of magic, developing technology is the least of anyone's concerns. Khufu just looks at her master without understanding absolutely anything he is saying, but what truly surprises her is that she is starting to find her master a little cute with her. However, once again her negative thoughts appear, asking whether she has gone crazy and how she could be finding that lunatic cute, asking whether she has already forgotten how she was punished all those years. Khufu stands up and walks away, thinking that in truth the protagonist is a two-faced person, and that all of this is just a deception, but Yuanyi is only focused on trying to understand how to concentrate his power. The system warns that he can trade points for abilities if he wants. While preparing the food, Khufu keeps thinking that her young master has really been very different over these last few days. Yuanyi is surprised and asks the system whether it really is possible to buy that kind of thing. Khufu keeps thinking that although her master's attitude is a little rough with her, he has not punished or humiliated her at every opportunity like he used to, because he even put medicine on her injuries and let her sleep in the bed without wanting anything in return. Yuenyi asks Doubting to tell him what abilities he can buy at that moment. The system says that he currently has 46 points and can trade 45 of them for the Danger Premonition ability. With that, he can predict danger 10 seconds before it happens. The protagonist thinks that is very interesting. However, predicting danger only 10 seconds before it happens may not be very useful, since there is so little time to react. Doubting warns that all abilities can be improved over time. However, the protagonist says that it is too expensive for him right now, and maybe it would be better to leave buying abilities for the future. Khufu looks at Yuanyi and thinks that now he looks good and smells very nice. The protagonist notices that she is acting strangely and thinks that something is wrong because the pot is already full of water and she is still pouring more in, which means that she is distracted. On top of that, she also keeps changing expressions, from gloomy to completely flushed all the time, which makes him wonder whether it is possible that her corruption level is rising again. He thinks that if that is happening, he needs to come up with something immediately, and he quickly imagines what he should do. He calls out to her and tells her to look at what he has. She turns around and sees that he has a watermelon and asks where he got that from. The protagonist explains that he met a girl from the tribe when he went out to gather firewood that morning and she gave it to him, saying that it was very sweet. Khufu asks whether a girl really gave that to him and thinks that now her young master is so handsome that when he goes out, girls even give him watermelons. Yuanyi laughs and says yes, and asks whether women do not like gathering fruit and flowers, and anyway, she should eat that watermelon, since a man like him does not like such sweet things that much. So it is her lucky day. But apparently, Khufu is already feeling that emotion people have when they love someone, something like jealousy. She slams the lid onto the pot very hard, saying that she does not want it. The protagonist is surprised and asks since when she has had the audacity to refuse something he is giving her. But Yuanyi realizes that she was very tense and runs out of the kitchen, saying that the atmosphere was too stuffy, so he needs to leave immediately, and tells her to prepare a proper meal for him. Outside, he sits on the ground and asks Doubting how he did, whether he managed to escape in time, and whether the situation is still under control. The system says that there is something different from before, because it detected a huge emotional fluctuation coming from Khufu, but it was not her corruption level. The protagonist says that as long as it is not corruption, then everything is still fine. Doubting still finds it a little strange, asking what kind of emotion it was that it detected. But inside, the fox girl was actually so angry that she seemed like a lioness. She keeps staring at the watermelon, thinking that those girls offered him a watermelon, and he simply accepted it. She wonders whether he really is the kind of person who accepts anything from any woman he runs into. Meanwhile, the protagonist is looking at the system menu but becomes completely disheartened, thinking that the menu has few functions and few points. So how is he supposed to improve it? At the moment, the protagonist is 20 years old and has 46 points to spend. His items are only basic hygiene products, a basic medical kit, as well as a set of women's clothes and a lighter that he had bought. The system's level is only at 2. Doubting tries to comfort his host, telling him not to worry, because as the 7 villainesses appear one by one, he will have more targets to conquer. That way, it will be much easier to get points, so he can make purchases in the system. Yuanyi thinks that actually makes some sense, because if he invests in all 7 at the same time, he could earn far more points. But he soon remembers their temperaments and how they might want to kill him, so he decides to drop the idea. He says that Khufu alone was already terrifying when he offered her the watermelon. Just imagining all 7 of them at once makes him feel like he might not be able to handle that kind of luck. In the tribe square, people were gathering, and the tribal leader, named Sufu, says that the winter of that year will be the same as the previous ones. The slave girls are tasked with picking cotton, and the male slaves are sent hunting. On top of that, the slave girls will be escorted by second-level warriors from the wolf tribe. Yuanyi walks into the middle of the crowd and asks where his Khufu is, until he finally finds her and gives her a suggestive wink, but she is still upset because of jealousy and simply ignores him. Yuanyi cannot understand exactly what is happening, because the day before he had given her a watermelon and even so she still got angry. On top of that, he has no idea how much longer he will have to keep up that villain role. He takes a deep breath, asking himself why it is so hard to win over women, because having a harem in web novels always seems so easy. 5 days later, the protagonist is sitting on the steps saying that all the slave girls have already returned, but there is still no sign of Khufu, and he asks the tribal chief whether he's not going to give any explanation about that. He declares that he will not move an inch from there until he gets one. Shufu gets irritated and tells the protagonist to stop that, saying that he already sent someone to speak with him and stressing that he needs to go back home. But the protagonist ignores all of that and asks whether there is any news. The tribal leader calls one of the guards over, who approaches and asks how he can help. Shufu says that the protagonist's slave, Khufu, still has not come back and asks what happened. The guard acts arrogantly, asking what that has to do with him, because that girl was too withdrawn and got excluded by the other slave girls. So she ended up picking cotton alone in an isolated corner and then disappeared. On top of that, he heard from the other slave girls that someone from the dark tribe kidnapped her. Hearing that, the protagonist becomes furious and grabs the guard by his clothes, yelling at him, saying that his slave was kidnapped and he said nothing, when his job as a guard was to protect the slave girls. The guard replies that he was there to watch the roads and make sure they did not slack off, and asks whether it is really his fault that that slave girl was practically asking to be killed by lagging behind everyone else. On top of that, he stresses that she is nothing but a slave, and that if she is killed, they can just buy another one, as if she were not worth anything. Yuanyi shouts that he does not care, and that now he is going to settle this man to man, until the guard is beaten for good, since he is a useless piece of trash who protects no one. As soon as the guard takes a punch to the face, he retaliates by trying to hit the protagonist. The two keep fighting, and one of the women comments that without Khufu, the Lee family has nothing to contribute that winter, so she's not surprised that the protagonist got so angry. Another woman says that now Yuanyi will have to fend for himself, since he cannot afford a second slave. The tribal leader tries to make the two stop fighting. Yuanyi slaps the guard, saying that Khufu was kidnapped, not killed, and that he will bring her back no matter the cost. As he walks back home, other people comment that she was just a slave, and that the way he is acting makes it look like he wants to play some kind of big shot. Inside his house, he is completely furious, and the system says that although his appearance changed the course of the story, the fact that Khufu got kidnapped did not change. It stresses that they only need to rescue her before Shi Tianrui does, and then they will keep the advantage. The protagonist grabs a stick, saying that he understands now and that it is time to head out for the rescue. Somewhere else, at the city gate, the original protagonist of the work, Shi Tianrui, asks his system whether it really detected another system inside that world and who it belongs to. Shi Ding, Tianrui's system, says that unfortunately it still has not managed to identify it. Tianrui comments that Khufu's worthless master, named Li Yuanyi, should have been eliminated a few days ago, but he is still alive, so maybe it could be him. Shi Ding tells his master to stay calm because even if it is that guy, there is nothing to fear, since it is normal for disposable characters to have slightly strange storylines, and he is not the only one. On top of that, the main plot of that story still revolves around him. Tianrui asks who would be afraid of a loser like that because after he rescues Khufu, he will travel the whole world with her, staying far away from that useless man who only knows how to oppress others. And in that way, maybe she will end up taking an interest in him. Ding emphasizes that Yuan Yi only knows how to humiliate and punish Khufu, and that, with those actions, he is only helping Tianrui win her over even faster without even realizing it. Looking at it that way, its master is definitely the chosen one. Meanwhile, in his house, the protagonist sneezes and asks who is talking badly about him. Deep inside a cave, within a prison cell, Khufu is being held captive, with several other girls around her. When a certain race commits a grave sin and ends up suffering divine punishment, they transform into members of the Dark Tribe, the ones abandoned by the gods and by the light. The people of the Dark Tribe are accepted by no one. They are fated to wander forever, sinking deeper and deeper into an unprecedented darkness. One of those women says that she is very hungry and looks at Khufu's body, saying that she can no longer hold herself back because she's almost starving to death. She holds a knife in her hand and approaches, asking the chief to let her cut off just a little piece and taste it. That way, she will feel a little more energized. The purple-haired woman takes the knife from her, asking what all the rush is for, saying that she knows very well that she is hungry, but she needs to control herself for now because that girl is very beautiful. She removes one of the buttons from Khufu's dress, saying that this time they managed to capture a rarity. With all those curves and such delicate skin, eating her with a knife would be a total waste. Just from smelling her, she feels something she has not felt in years, because when she was young, she also had a beautiful face and a delightful natural scent. Khufu remains silent, keeping her eyes lowered. After getting ready, the protagonist begins to leave, and the tribal leader says that the Dark Tribe is always lurking outside the village, and even so the protagonist wants to travel alone at night without taking even one tribal warrior with him. The moment he leaves the city, he will be signing his own death sentence. Yuan Yi tells the tribal leader that if he is referring to that guy who got beaten up earlier, he can keep him. Shufu grabs the protagonist by the arm, saying that he does not even like that girl that much, so why is he risking so much for her? Yuan Yi tells the elder that he has all the respect in the world for him, but he has his own reasons for acting that way. Shufu is surprised and asks him to explain what those reasons are. The protagonist thinks that if he is going to say something, it needs to be something bad to match his character. He laughs and says that that woman is his slave, and that if those useless Dark Tribe people lay their hands on her, then where will he even hide his face afterward? The tribal leader becomes completely furious, saying that the protagonist is already an untrustworthy person and still wants to joke around at a time like this. He emphasizes that if that woman dies in there, no one will know what happened. Yuan Yi asks what Shufu knows about it and stresses that a person lives by reputation the way a tree lives by its roots. Because of that, he would rather die than let a slave suffer because of his fault. Yuan Yi tells the tribal leader to leave and stop meddling in his affairs because if he keeps standing in his way, he will have to do the same thing he did to that useless guard earlier. The tribal leader tells the protagonist that he is a trusted friend of his father, and that is why he came there to try to make him face reality. But he never imagined he would be the kind of person who cares more about pride than about his own life. Shufu keeps trying to stop him from leaving, saying that if the protagonist does not have the money to buy another slave, he can help him, since he is like an uncle to Yuan Yi. Then the protagonist can take any slave from his household. He just needs to give up this idea. But Yuan Yi ignores all of that and says that Khufu is his property, so he is the one who decides what will happen to her. In truth, however, the protagonist did not expect that kindness from the elder, because he did not imagine there was someone who cared whether he lived or died. The moment Yuan Yi passes through the city gates, a strange energy appears behind him. The protagonist gets startled and turns around, asking who is there, but he sees nothing. Doubting asks why he does not buy danger premonition in situations like that since it could save his life. But Yuan Yi still insists that 45 points is too expensive and that he would be left with almost nothing after buying it, complaining that things could at least be a little cheaper. But the energy from before appears again, this time rushing straight toward him. Seconds later, the protagonist disappears completely, as if he had never been there. Sometime later, inside a cave, he hears the sound of dripping water and begins to regain consciousness, complaining that the faucet is leaking again and asking which doormate is going to check it this time. But suddenly, he opens his eyes in shock, thinking that something is wrong, and asks where he is. He calls his system in panic. Doubting appears, congratulating the protagonist, saying that he hit the jackpot, since he was captured by the second villainess. He asks if the system is talking about the villainess who lives in the Dark Tribe. Doubting says that is right and tells him to stay alert because she is already there, wishing him good luck. Yuan Yi crouches and tries to move quietly, complaining that there is not even a small exit for him to escape through, But suddenly he notices something and wonders why it feels like she is extremely heated. All of a sudden, a woman jumps on top of him, and the protagonist is shocked, thinking that she is the second strongest villainess, and also very beautiful. She runs her hand over him, but Yuanyi asks her to calm down a bit, saying that even though she is very beautiful and hard to refuse, they need to be patient. However, he cannot understand why, if she is a villainess, she is acting like that. The second villainess says that the protagonist woke up at the perfect time and that she would really like to have a child with him. Yuenyi is shocked by that and she starts pulling at his clothes, trying to make it happen. But the protagonist slaps her hand away, asking what she thinks she is doing. Because for something like that, there needs to be the right time, the right place, and the right person. He stands up and asks what she thinks about letting things happen naturally. He thinks that he cannot lose focus, because his real mission there is to find Khufu. Considering how the story keeps putting him in bad situations, it would be dangerous if she suddenly appeared, and her corruption level rose enough to eliminate him. But because he refused the second villainess's request, the system warns that this is not good at all because her corruption level has started to rise. He thinks that now he is completely doomed since he has to deal with another rising corruption level. The second villainess starts losing patience and tears part of his pants. Yuenyi taps her on the head and yells, saying that he knows she's in a hurry, but she cannot act like that. He says that he is more experienced with that kind of thing than she is, so she needs to listen to him a little. She is surprised and asks if he really is experienced with that. Yuenyi becomes embarrassed and tries to fix the situation, explaining that having a child requires a certain level of skill, and asks what she thinks about understanding the theory first, since theory is very important, and then they can move on to practice. The second villainess says that she would rather go straight to the practical part because her parents only needed one night to have her. So if she sleeps with the protagonist that night, she might get pregnant right away, and if he does not want to take off his clothes to help her, then she will do it herself. She pushes him down again. He asks if she has any siblings because her parents probably did not plan to have only one child, and if she does, he asks whether she has ever wondered why she ended up as an only child. That makes her curious. And she asks why her parents had only one child. Yuan Yi laughs, saying that he was right, because to have a child, everything needs to align. The right time, the right place, and the right people. And if even one of those factors is missing, it will not work. He thinks that if they do that there and Khufu sees him with Deng Tinghuang, he will be completely finished. And even if they are really going to have a child, it should only happen after he has conquered all 7 of them. Doubting tells the protagonist that he is right, because at the beginning he cannot let one know about the others, otherwise it will cause huge problems. The second villainess asks the protagonist if he can explain what the right time, the right place, and the right people are. Yuanyi asks whether her parents love each other, but in truth, his mind is already going blank, and he does not know what else he can come up with to get out of that situation. The second villainess answers that yes, her parents are the most loving couple in the world. Otherwise, considering their status, it would have been impossible for them to be together. Yuanyi says that is exactly it and that only people who are deeply in love can have children. And since they just met, it would be better to let their feelings develop a bit more. She grabs a notebook to write everything down, and Yuanyi explains that when there are feelings involved, the man becomes energetic and constantly seeks out his partner. On the other hand, when those feelings do not exist, the man becomes dull and unmotivated. She writes everything down, including that part. She becomes happy, saying that she knew she chose the right person, because apparently the protagonist knows what he is talking about, and because of that, she has already decided that she will have the most beautiful child in the world with him, and she lightly licks his ear, making all the hair on his body stand on end. She tries again, and the protagonist asks if she did not hear anything he said the second time. She says that she truly likes him. She adds that she started liking him when she saw him protecting that slave earlier. The protagonist is confused because that means she has already seen Khufu. Even the system is completely confused, asking what is going on. She says that she saw Yuanyi protecting Khufu at the very beginning. She was so happy about that she says it is fine if the protagonist likes her a little less, because she will make up for it by liking him twice as much. That way, everything will balance out with plenty of love. She uses her abilities to wrap him in her energy, and the protagonist gets scared, asking what she is doing. She climbs on top of him and asks if it is not obvious, saying that they are going to do what is necessary to have a child and asks him to teach her properly how to do it. The atmosphere between them starts heating up, but the protagonist tries to control the situation, saying that it does not look good for such a beautiful girl to be so forward. He tells her to calm down and let him handle things. The second villainess is happy to see that the protagonist is blushing because her mother told her that when a man's face turns red like that, it means he is getting excited. Yuanyi is shocked because he never imagined he would end up in that position at a time like that. Now he is completely in trouble. She keeps teasing him, asking if he is embarrassed because he should not worry since she will take good care of him. The protagonist is even more shocked by that situation and says that he is not embarrassed and that she misunderstood things, asking her to get off him because if she keeps acting like that, he will not be able to hold himself back and might give in. But the second villainess starts breathing heavily, saying that the temperature is rising a lot and that it is coming from his body, and seeing that she is taking all the initiative, he wonders if she really is a villainess and whether he actually needs to conquer her, and he starts getting carried away by the moment. Doubting appears, telling him to get a grip, otherwise he will mess everything up. The second villainess lowers her head slightly and says that this is what her mother taught her. The moment of greatest passion is the best time to have a child, and apparently she will be able to get pregnant right there. The protagonist realizes that she seems to know more than him about how to have a child. He thinks that he needs to control himself and endure for at least 30 seconds. But not even a second has passed and he is already overwhelmed. He almost gives in, but doubting keeps trying to stop him, saying that considering Deng Tinghuang's personality, if she gets pregnant there, she will definitely keep him locked up until the baby is born. On top of that, once he becomes the child's father, he will not have the freedom to leave and search for the other wives and complete the mission. Yuan Yi tells the system that he is trying his best to resist, but it is like the saying, constant pressure eventually breaks resistance. Ting Huang keeps looking at him, clearly ready to go through with it. The system says it understands how frustrating that situation must be for him, not being able to act with such beauty right in front of him. However, he needs to think with a clear head and remember the consequences of failing the mission. Not to mention, he also cannot forget why he is there. Khufu is still waiting to be rescued. That makes the protagonist reflect and finally agree with the system, realizing that he needs to think of something. Ting Huang asks him whether she bit him too hard. He takes a deep breath, thinking that his arrow is ready to be fired and that that woman only has one thing on her mind, and he has no idea how to act in a situation like that with the atmosphere heating up. How is he supposed to make her stop? Then he finally remembers something because there was a rule in the original story that said that the dark tribe drains their partner's energy during mating, and that if the partner had not eaten anything, they could even die of exhaustion during the act. He thinks that if she really likes him that much, she will not let him die. And if she does not want him to die, then she will not let him starve, which means he just needs to say something related to that to get out of that situation. He stands up saying that he is very hungry to the point of even feeling a bit of a headache. Ting Huang agrees with him, saying that she got so carried away that she forgot to feed him since capturing him, and apologizes, saying that she almost caused his death. Doubting says that he was clever, as always. She tells him to wait there for a bit as she will go hunt something for him to eat. As soon as she leaves, Yuan Yi grabs his clothes, saying that there is no time to waste and that they need to get out of there immediately. But Doubting reminds the protagonist that if he does that, when Ting Huang comes back and sees that he ran away, her corruption level will shoot up to 100% like a rocket, resulting in his instant death. The protagonist becomes desperate, asking what they should do, because if he runs, he will die, and if he stays, he will also die, so there are no options. The system tells him not to panic and to calm down a little. Yuan Yi asks Doubting to help him think of a solution. He asks if there is any key point in Ting Huang's past in the original work that they can use in that situation. Meanwhile, in the middle of the forest, Ting Huang comes across a tiger that growls angrily at her, trying to attack. She dodges and grabs a stick to tie her hair, saying that she does not have time to play because she needs to finish quickly since she has to return to feed her man. A few minutes later, she returns to the cave, saying that she caught a big and tasty tiger and asks whether he prefers the leg or the ribs. But as soon as she looks ahead, she is shocked by what she sees, or rather by what she does not see. The protagonist had left the cave and gone to the riverbank to fish. 3 women were watching him, and he finally manages to catch a fish. He notices that the girls were watching him and asks the system what they're saying. Doubting says that one of them said that the protagonist is very thin and that his meat probably would not taste very good. The shortest one said that his backside is big and that it would taste great roasted. Yuan Yi gets angry, thinking that she is shameless. Doubting says that does not matter since those women are eyeing him. He complains, saying that one fish is too little since he was planning to catch a few more. But he grabs the fish he caught and runs, trying to escape. The 3 girls chase after him. As he runs desperately, he thinks that that world is extremely dangerous and that he needs to speed up his mission of conquering the villainesses immediately because if he does not gain points to exchange for abilities, he will end up dying sooner or later. Doubting tells him to stay quiet and focus on running because they are already getting closer, about 13 steps behind. Yuan Yi runs with all his strength, thinking that the Dark Tribe's forest is an extremely dangerous place for a human, and that he does not want to die there. But while running, he ends up tripping over a log and falls to the ground. The system says that this is not good at all because they are already close enough to reach him. He looks back and thinks that this time it is over. Doubting says that they are 7 steps away and now 3 steps away. But nothing happens. The protagonist gets up asking if he is already dead, if the blade hit him. He hears a strange noise and asks the system if that sound could be part of his body falling to the ground after being cut, because he does not have the courage to look back. But Doubting says that maybe the best option is to look back and see for himself. Trembling with fear, the protagonist finally turns around and sees that the 3 women were eliminated instantly. Ting Huang appears in front of him with a terrifying aura, consumed by one of the most dangerous emotions that exist. In a cold voice, she asks if he left the cave to meet those 3 women. Doubting says that this time they are doomed, because her emotions are in complete chaos and she will become fully corrupted in 3 seconds. Ting Huang's hand starts to tremble, and she says that since it has come to this, she has no choice but to. At the last second, the protagonist runs toward her and hugs her, calming her heart and mind. Yuan Yi thanks her, saying that she is a hero, because thanks to her arriving at the right moment, he is alive now. Ting Huang becomes a little confused and asks why he was there. Yuan Yi shows her the fish, saying that he was catching it for her. Ting Huang blushes and asks if that is really for her. The protagonist places the fish in her hand and explains that it is humiliating for him, as a man, to stand around inside a cave depending on a woman to survive. As he hands her the fish, he touches her hand, saying that she is very delicate and that the one who should be taking care of her is him. That is why he decided to go fishing and caught that fish for her. Ting Huang becomes emotional and asks if the protagonist's intention was not to run away but to hunt for her. He confirms that it was. Ting Huang hugs him, shouting that she misunderstood everything because she thought he was trying to escape. She apologizes, saying that he is the best man in the world. They return inside the cave, and Ting Huang, with incredible ease, splits the tiger in half with her bare hands, saying that this time she wrongly blamed the protagonist. She tells him not to worry so much because she is not that weak, and that no matter what happens from now on, she will protect him. Yuan Yi, trembling with fear, says that everything is fine, and thinks that if he had run away, his fate would have been the same as that tiger. She takes a piece of meat and hands it to him, telling him to eat, but the protagonist says that it is raw and thinks that he needs to return to his house. Ting Huang tells him to eat quickly because they still need to settle some unfinished matters. Yuan Yi laughs and says that he does not eat raw meat, but Ting Huang gets irritated because if he eats the meat, then they can make the baby, and if he does not eat the meat, then they cannot make the baby. Doubting warns the protagonist that things are starting to get complicated, since Ting Huang is thinking that the protagonist does not want to make a baby with her, and her corruption is rising again. The protagonist tries to smooth things over by saying that he knows she is eager to have a child and he is too, even more eager than she is, to do that. However, if he eats that raw like that, he will get some kind of bacteria causing diarrhea, and if that happens, it will be hard for him to get his arrow ready to do that. Ting Huang asks if he is serious and questions whether the people of the wolf tribe do not eat raw meat. Yuan Yi asks her to wait a little so he can cook that meat, and after that he can eat and then solve the child problem. He points out that nowadays things are a little different from before, since the people of his tribe have stopped eating raw meat a long time ago. He points at the stone, saying that if she helps him make a hole right in the middle of that stone, he can cook something really tasty for her to eat. Ting Huang ends up agreeing and picks up a rock and starts striking the other stone. The protagonist goes to a spring and starts filling a stone bowl with water. He opens the system and starts looking for some seasonings to put into the cooked meat, until he finally finds one that might be good and spends 1 point to buy it. Ting Huang is carrying some wood, but she is irritated, since the wood she wants is a different kind. Yuan Yi keeps buying time, asking her to help him clean that fish. She asks herself if this is going to take very long before they can start having fun. A few minutes later, she sits down beside him on the ground and asks if things are ready already. The protagonist throws the fish into the water and says it is almost done, and that now it will go a little faster. He takes out his lighter and lights the fire, leaving her so shocked that she even falls to the ground. While cooking, the protagonist sings a song, but Doubting tells him to stop singing like an idiot and pay more attention to her. Ting Huang is crouched in the corner, trembling and breathing heavily. The protagonist gets a little confused, and she asks if he has set all that up to make that fire kill her. The fire starts getting a little stronger, and she becomes even more frightened. He notices that and asks if she is afraid of fire. Ting Huang stands up and asks if not eating raw meat has only been an excuse. Irritated by the situation, she says that apparently the protagonist does not want to have a child with her, and that all that talk has only been to make her lower her guard so he can kill her. Yuan Yi gets a little scared, thinking that now everything is ruined, because one tiny mistake from him and she is already making up a story of betrayal. Trying to calm the situation, he goes up to her and holds her hand. Yuanyi explains that it is necessary to light a campfire so that he can heat the pot and cook what is inside it. Besides that, with the light of the fire, the cave becomes a little brighter and he can see her wonderful face better. Not to mention that with the campfire lit, that cave feels a little more alive and cozy for them. He leads her back to the corner again, thinking that maybe she really is not planning to kill him. Yuanyi sits Ting Huang down in the corner of the cave and says that if she is afraid of the fire, it is fine, because she just has to stay there quietly and leave things to him. He goes back to preparing the sticks, saying that among all the girls, she is the prettiest, and that is why she has been chosen as a companion. A little while later, everything is ready and he sets out a table so they can eat. The protagonist explains to her that to eat the cooked fish properly, she has to start with the belly because it is the part with the fewest bones and where the meat is juiciest. Ting Huang stares at the chopsticks in her hand and tries to use them, but she cannot do it properly. Yuanyi says that is not how they are used and offers to teach her. He places his hand over hers and starts explaining how she should hold them. That makes her even more enchanted and comfortable with everything. He asks her to taste a little of the food, and as soon as she eats it, she shouts that it is delicious. Yuanyi tells her that he has warned her the food will turn out really good, and if she truly likes it that much, then she can eat more because he will cook for her again in the future. Ting Huang gets so excited about that she begins quickly eating the food on the table. The system congratulates him because her affection level has gone up by 0.5 and he gains 30 points. Yuanyi says that now he has points to spare and can buy Danger Premonition. Doubting says that is a wise decision and that he will arrange it immediately. A few seconds later, the Danger Premonition skill is assigned to the host, costing 45 points. Yuanyi asks Doubting to show him again what has happened in Ting Huang's past. The system shows an image of her running, while some people say that she is a half-breed and they cannot let her leave that place. Ting Huang is the result of mixed blood between the Dark Tribe and humans. Her parents die when she is just a child, and she begins wandering around, desolate and with nothing in life. Rejected by both tribes, she faces death by hunger many times, which makes her value food in an almost instinctive way. Her miserable childhood makes her capable of eating anything necessary to survive. With no one to guide her, she acts purely on instinct throughout her whole life, and when she matures, the desire to reproduce becomes her strongest instinct. Returning to the present, Ting Huang looks at the protagonist and asks why he is crying. Yuanyi thinks that just hearing the story of what she has gone through causes an immense pain in his chest. Overwhelmed by his emotions, he wipes away his tears and hugs her very tightly, saying that with him there, she will never be alone again in her life. Ting Huang finally begins to feel another person's affection, and at last feels loved again. Doubting informs him that her affection level has just risen by 1 point, and the protagonist earns 60 points as a reward. He thinks that he has finally managed to gain points a little more easily than usual. During the night in the tribe square, people are gathered together. Khufu has returned home a little injured. The people there ask her to stop freaking out because they have already sent some people to look for the protagonist, but Khufu is beginning to grow suspicious, and her eyes turn red. She says that there are so many people in the tribe, and even so her master has disappeared, and that is a story she cannot accept. She keeps demanding to know what they have done to her master. Tianrui is also in the tribe watching that situation, and points out that maybe that story is a little off, because it has been his turn to save that girl, so how has she managed to come back alone and what does he need to do now? Scheiding agrees with him, saying that it really is a little strange. Back inside the cave, Ting Huang shows that she's not joking around and tightly holds Yuanyi's hand. He asks her to wait a little, but she points out that he has promised they would do that after eating. She emphasizes that she wants to have many children with him. Yuanyi asks if she remembers why she has been treated so badly when she is only a child and questions whether she really wants their children to go through the same thing. That makes Ting Huang freeze. She asks how he knows about her past. The protagonist says that the traits of her body do not look like those of the Dark Tribe, which has been punished by the gods, and that she looks more like a natural half-breed. Members of the Dark Tribe cannot have children among themselves, so he can say for sure that she is the child of someone from the Dark Tribe and another race. He points out that she knows better than he does how badly that world treats her own kind. He thinks that he needs to stay calm and focused to make her believe that. Ting Huang stands up, saying that she will go for a walk to calm down, and says that for now they really do not need to make the child. As soon as she leaves, Yuanyi lets out a deep breath, saying that she has finally stabilized, but the system asks why he is so calm, since they have a huge problem to solve. The protagonist asks what he means by that, and the system says that Khufu's corruption level is rising like a rocket, reaching a critical point. Yuanyi gets worried and asks the system why it has not warned him earlier, saying that they need to go back immediately. Doubting points out that there will not be enough time to walk back, so he will have to be teleported. Yuanyi is surprised to learn that he has that ability and tells the system to take him back immediately, but Doubting warns him that teleporting to the exact location costs 50 points. The protagonist is furious, but Doubting explains that it is not his fault because that kind of thing is decided by the main system. With no other choice, the protagonist ends up agreeing and tells the system to go ahead with the teleportation. He is taken to the tribe's lodging, stands up, notices that several people are gathered there, and starts shouting that he has arrived and tells everyone to make way. Khufu is already about to eliminate one of the guards and says that he has already returned and now everything is fine. She releases the guard, who falls unconscious to the ground, and asks her master how he has managed to come back on his own. Doubting warns that he has detected a drop in her corruption. Yueni is surprised, thinking that all this time he believes she hates him so much that she wants him dead. But just his safe return is enough for her corruption to start falling. The tribe leader scolds the protagonist, asking if he does not teach proper manners to his slave, since she dares to attack one of the tribe's warriors, and questions whether that is some kind of rebellion. However, the protagonist is not very patient for that and says that that bunch of weaklings cannot even find a single slave, and the tribe leader still has the nerve to call them warriors. He tells the leader to stop talking nonsense and get out of the way. The tribe leader tries to insult him, but the protagonist interrupts, asking what he thinks he is about to say. He also states that it is completely normal for a slave to defend her master, so Khufu has done nothing wrong. And as if that were not enough, he adds that when he is kidnapped by the Dark Tribe, that bunch of useless so-called warriors just stands around doing absolutely nothing, so they should be dismissed immediately, since they are nothing but a bunch of useless people who serve no purpose. He holds Khufu's hand and says that they need to go home and rest. While the leader cries, Khufu feels like a real woman, seeing that her man risks his life to go after her and even confronts the tribe leader to defend her honor. Doubting says that her affection level has increased by 1 star and he gains 60 points. Tianrui, who is still observing everything, says that Yuanyi, who is just a disposable side character, has not been eliminated again. He asks his system if that is some kind of pirated version of the original story. Shiding tells his host that it is a completely authentic version, and he can trust it, but Tianrui decides to let it go, saying that the story is all wrong and that it is better for him to go after Ting Huang, because from what he knows, if he just walks a bit through the forest, she will appear. Outside on a tree, Yuen is surprised that the protagonist manages to escape from the Dark Tribe without a single scratch, especially that useless young master who cannot do anything on his own, so how does he manage to escape from there? Zhufu also does not believe that story and, completely furious, says that the protagonist has not been kidnapped by the Dark Tribe, since apparently he has just been wandering around without wanting to come back, trying to act like a hero. Because of that, she says she hopes lightning will strike his head if she ever worries about Yuanyi again. A short time later, back at his house, Yuanyi and Khufu sit at the table and she becomes a little embarrassed, wondering why her master is looking at her like that. The protagonist tries to get closer, but she stands up a little startled. He finds that reaction a bit strange and asks what that is about, saying that everything has been fine until now. So why does she suddenly get nervous again? He cannot understand why things turn out that way, since just a moment ago, the two of them are getting along well. Khufu blushes a little and says it is nothing, saying that she will cook for him right away. She runs to the kitchen, and the protagonist wonders if that redness on her face is anger. The system says it is not anger, because his panel shows that her affection level is still rising, even if slowly. Yuanyi says that might mean she is finally starting to like him, and if that is true, things are getting interesting, and it is finally time to change strategy. Doubting tells the host to pay a bit more attention, and the protagonist asks what is happening now. The system warns that Ting Huang has returned to the cave after her walk, sees that he is no longer there, and starts thinking that he has escaped from her, causing her corruption level to rise very quickly. Yuanyi becomes frustrated and asks if he can know which idiot genius comes up with the rule that the villainesses cannot meet at the beginning. Doubting tells him to go argue with the author since he is the one who writes the original story. Yuanyi remains so irritated that he asks the system if it can eliminate the author because there are 7 main villainesses and they cannot even run into each other, asking if he is stuck in some kind of love war. But he takes a deep breath, saying there is not much he can do. So he will talk to Khufu before leaving again, because if she thinks he disappears again, it will become extremely difficult to lower her corruption and bring her back. Sometime later in Ting Huang's cave, her screams can be heard from far away. She is saying that the protagonist is just a smooth talker who makes up that whole story just to escape from her, which means he is not trustworthy at all. She swears that he will not escape no matter what. She will find him. But Yuanyi asks what is going on. She is surprised to hear his voice and turns around excited. The protagonist is kneeling, saying that he has bought a gift for her, spending 3 points. She becomes so excited that she jumps on him, saying she cannot wait anymore, so they need to have a child right there and then. Doubting warns the protagonist that he cannot give in to doing that, because if she gets pregnant, he will not be able to escape again, and when that happens, there will be no one to stop the other villainesses from becoming completely corrupted. Yuanyi says that unfortunately he already knows that. The system asks if he wants to have a child with her, but he says no. He asks her if she knows how reproduction works between the Dark Tribe and the Wolf Tribe. He points out that the two species are different, and doing it carelessly can be very risky. Ting Huang is surprised and asks if doing that can really be dangerous. He says yes and explains that because of that, he needs to understand her body a little better. She asks why he needs to do that. Yuan Yi says it is nothing serious and asks if she trusts him. Ting Huang says yes, and the protagonist explains that in the Wolf Tribe, they have a ritual before making a child called foreplay. He thinks that it is her first time and that if he makes her feel a whirlwind of emotions, leaving her body weak and unfocused, he will be able to control the situation easily. Yuan Yi says he will begin, and moves a little closer to her, saying that he needs to understand the body of someone from the Dark Tribe and asks her to relax as much as possible. She says she is already relaxed and he begins using his hands, making her feel something very intense burning inside her body. She asks if he has already done what he needs, but the protagonist smiles and says that that is only the beginning and continues the movements of his fingers. Ting Huang begins to give in to her emotions. The protagonist thinks that an untouched body is indeed very sensitive. He stands up and picks her up in his arms, saying it is time to go to the bed. She simply holds onto him tighter and lets it happen. Yuan Yi lays her down on the bed and asks if she wants to continue. Ting Huang says it feels a little strange, but she is enjoying it a lot. Yuan Yi says it is time to move forward a bit and continues his movements. He does such a good job that in the end she becomes so tired that she falls asleep. Doubting says that apparently he knows exactly what he is doing and congratulates him, saying that he has great news. He points out that he has detected a significant drop in Ting Huang's corruption, and her affection level has increased by 0.5, earning him 30 points. He sits on the bed saying that his efforts have not been in vain and throws himself onto the bed thinking that he also needs some rest. Meanwhile, inside his house, Kufu is looking at her hands, which are trembling. She remembers that she easily eliminates the three girls who are trying to take advantage of that situation, which makes her think that her strength has returned to normal. Yuan, who is still observing, thinks that the protagonist has not left the tribe's lodging, so how has he disappeared? And things are getting stranger and stranger. But on the other hand, she also thinks that all that mystery makes things more interesting. Inside the cave, Yuan Yi prepares to light a campfire, and Ting Huang wakes up, asking what has happened to her. He explains that she has gotten so tired after they play a bit that she falls asleep. He asks if she is feeling better. Ting Huang simply runs to him, saying that he has not run away again. The protagonist smiles and says that they need to do that again in the future, so how can he abandon her? She asks if he is telling the truth and that he will not leave anymore. Yuan Yi explains that it is not quite like that because he still needs to return to his tribe. Otherwise, his friends there will become very worried about him. But Ting Huang immediately refuses, saying that there is no chance of that happening. The protagonist asks what she is afraid of, because she knows very well where he lives, so he will not run away. He holds her hand and asks if she likes what he has done with her, and she says she loves it. He asks if she would like to do it again. Ting Huang says she is ready. The protagonist says that first he needs to go back there, but she is still a little reluctant to let him leave. Yuan Yi promises her that he will not run away. She thinks about it for a moment and says that he can go, but first she wants to mark him. Yuan Yi asks what kind of mark that is, and she explains that if she marks him, she will be able to track him wherever he goes, which would make her feel more at ease. The protagonist is confused and asks how she plans to mark him. Ting Huang walks up to him and says she will show him. She gives a small bite on his neck and the mark begins to glow. He asks if she can really track him with that. He thinks that being tracked by one of the villainesses can be a bit risky, but if it is not done that way, he might end up provoking her too much, causing her corruption to rise. Ting Huang says that now everything is fine, because if his life is ever in danger, she will know immediately. He thinks that, looking at it that way, it might mean a bit more safety, which makes it worth the risk. He asks if he can leave now, and she smiles and says yes. The two say goodbye and he leaves the cave. He thinks that he will walk a bit farther away, and after that he can use coordinate teleportation. Besides that, he thinks that just one bite is enough to make Ting Huang much more at ease with him leaving, and the more he thinks about it, the stranger it seems. He walks a bit through the forest and hides behind some leaves, saying that this place is already well hidden and he can use his teleportation. But before he does that, he hears someone saying that he is already getting worried, since he has been doing this all day and it is getting dark. The story makes it very clear that the protagonist is kidnapped by Ting Huang as soon as he enters the forest. Yuan Yi thinks that the real protagonist of the original story is there, and has definitely gone after Ting Huang. Tianrui starts complaining, saying that it is better to forget that idea of being kidnapped, because he is looking for that woman like a madman and there is no sign of her. Besides that, he almost gets caught by members of the Dark Tribe. Scheiding tells his host not to give up and to insist a little more because, as the story follows its course, he will eventually meet Ting Huang. The protagonist thinks that guy must be talking to his system. Besides that, the part of the story that belongs to Tianrui is taken by him, which is why he cannot find Ting Huang. He thinks that there is not much he can do. Even if he is just a disposable character, his life is still a life. And if that guy is such an incredible protagonist, he can just go there and deal with it himself. But before using his teleportation, he stops and thinks a little better, since Ting Huang is very close to that guy, and he is handsome and even has a real system by his side. So there is no point competing against that, and to make things worse, he gives his first time to that woman, so she has to take responsibility for him. Yuanyi thinks that he absolutely cannot leave now, and asks his system to send him back to the cave immediately. Inside the cave, Ting Huang is lying down, thinking that everything is very boring. Suddenly, she hears footsteps approaching. The protagonist smiles as he looks at her, saying that he suddenly remembers something and needs to come back. She becomes very happy, calling him love, and says that he comes back because maybe he cannot leave her. He smiles and says, "That is right." Yuanyi tells her that he has given her a dress for her to wear, and when he leaves, he remembers that he has not yet seen her wearing it and asks if he can see it before leaving. But in truth, the protagonist is thinking that he absolutely cannot let her leave that cave under any circumstances, because he needs to prevent the two from meeting at all costs. Ting Huang says that is fine, and a moment later she comes back calling him love again, saying that those clothes are a bit too peculiar. Yuanyi explains that those are the kinds of clothes humans usually wear and asks if she likes them. Ting Huang, completely in love, says she likes anything he gives her. Doubting says that he has detected a significant drop in her corruption level and that her affection level has increased again by 0.5, giving him another 30 points. Ting Huang sits beside him and says she has finished changing and asks if he is leaving already, but Yuanyi says that first he wants to put her to sleep, and when she falls asleep, then he will leave. She feels happy but at the same time a bit sad, saying that he still has to go and that is a little upsetting. Time passes and night falls once again. Tianrui is still walking through the forest and says that there is no way he can keep doing that, because night has come again, and he is a bit afraid he will not be as lucky this time because if he runs into the Dark Tribe again, his few points probably will not be enough. He points out that anyway, the Dark Tribe will soon enter hibernation, so until that moment comes, he needs to go after the other villainesses first and then come back to find Ting Huang. Scheiding agrees with his host and he uses his teleportation to leave. Still inside the cave, the protagonist notices that his beloved has fallen asleep and decides to return as well, going straight to his house but staying outside. He quickly looks in all directions and thinks that he is very lucky because there is no one nearby. But he realizes that Khufu has not gone to sleep yet and enters his house, telling her that he is back. Yuan, who is still observing, becomes confused, asking herself how that boy has knowledge of high-level magic. But as soon as he enters, he realizes she is not there, but rather just a fox, sleeping. The fox wakes up at the noise and transforms into Khufu. She says that her master has already returned. He asks why she is sleeping on the floor, but Khufu thinks that her master goes fishing and only comes back now, and he only brings 2 fish, which shows that he is quite weak. She says that she has already made dinner and will serve it now, but Yuanyi asks her to wait a moment and asks her to answer what he asks. Khufu smiles, saying that she's already used to sleeping on the floor, but the protagonist says that she clearly prefers soft beds because he has already noticed that. With a trembling voice, she agrees, saying that she will sleep on the bed from now on. He gently pats her head, saying that she does not need to be afraid because he will not hurt her. Even though she likes her master, she remains suspicious, thinking that he has been acting a bit strange lately. Yuanyi tells her to stay there and rest for a bit because he will serve dinner, since he does not want to risk her poisoning him. She is surprised and smiles discreetly, thinking that this is very good. Her master has not changed, he's just not as cruel as before. While he is getting the food, the system informs that it has detected an increase in Khufu's affection value, which rises by 0.1 point, and he gains 5 points because of that. He becomes confused, saying that he really cannot understand how that girl's mind works. Doubting says that how it works does not matter, because in any case, the protagonist's ability to deal with her has improved a lot. He encourages his host to keep going like that because once the points reach 150, it will be possible to upgrade the system shop. Yuanyi laughs, saying that he does not know exactly what is happening to him, but his confidence is sky high. He returns to the dining table and tells her to sit down and eat now if she does not want to be punished. Still smiling, she quickly sits down. He places the food on the table and tells her to eat properly and clean the plate because he hates the idea of someone in his house going hungry. He asks if she understands and she says yes, calling him master. Before starting to eat, Yuanyi feels a slight discomfort in his neck and begins to scratch it. Khufu notices this immediately and slams the table angrily. She walks up to her master and looks at his neck. Shocked to see that mark, she asks if he has been marked. Yuanyi notices that she seems quite angry now. Khufu asks if that is something from the Dark Tribe because that aura clearly shows it is them. The protagonist tries to explain the situation in a convincing way, saying that he ends up being captured by them and receives that bite, but takes the chance to escape when they go hunting, and asks if that mark can cause him any problems. Yuanyi thinks that apparently Khufu does not like that mark, so it is better for him to play dumb. Khufu, irritated, starts pacing back and forth, saying that some woman from the Dark Tribe is definitely watching her master. Besides that, she knows that this woman will want to force mating with Yuanyi. The protagonist is impressed with her analysis and deduction, since she gets it exactly right. Khufu slams the table again, saying that they need to leave immediately and go somewhere that is difficult for the Dark Tribe to access. Yuanyi asks if they really need to leave. Khufu explains that once he becomes a target of someone from the Dark Tribe, if he is captured, he will be used as nothing more than a reproduction tool drained to the soul and then discarded. Yuanyi places the chopsticks on the table, saying that if that is the case, then she can have her freedom. Khufu is speechless for a moment and then lowers her gaze, saying that she just does not like the idea of seeing someone she knows get hurt. Doubting says that he has detected a slight emotional fluctuation coming from Khufu, but he cannot tell whether it is corruption or affection. Yuanyi looks at her and points out that he already knows she is very loyal to him, which makes him feel quite happy. But first he wants her to sit down and calm down a little so they can enjoy that meal. She remains worried and Yuanyi changes the subject, saying that he is very tired after a whole day of fishing, so they should talk about that mark the next morning. Khufu sits down again and the protagonist thinks that he needs to calm her as much as possible, because he cannot let her find out anything about Tinghuang. A little while later, as soon as they finish the meal, the protagonist blows out the candles and looks at Khufu, who is already asleep. He thinks that she looks very comfortable and decides to touch her tail. As soon as he touches it, he's impressed by how soft it is. While holding her, he thinks that she has not tried to turn into a wolf even once, and he wonders if the fur is rough, but he truly cannot understand how something can be that comfortable because he does not want to stop. Khufu wakes up again, all red-faced, asking where he is putting his hand. Yuanyi keeps enjoying that situation, thinking that it is a little wrong to do. However, he is her master, so it would be foolish not to take some kind of advantage. Khufu is starting to get excited, thinking that her master is not supposed to touch the tip of her tail. He keeps stroking her while she thinks that if he continues like that, her body will start to feel a little strange. The protagonist continues, and she says that she cannot hold back anymore and starts breathing a little more deeply. Yuanyi asks what is happening to her and whether she is not comfortable with that. The system informs him that her affection level has gone up by another point and that he has received 50 reward points. Doubting tells him that he has reached the mark of 150 points and congratulates him for unlocking the upgrade for the system shop. Now the system shop is at level 2. New items have been added to the stock and he can choose as he pleases. Khufu gets up and thinks that she must be going crazy for finding it comforting to get close to that guy, but just for that night, she will sleep beside her master. Yuanyi keeps caressing her, saying that she is a good girl and wishing her a very good night's sleep. The next day, early in the morning, the protagonist wakes up and sees that she is lying beside him. He thinks that she's very well behaved while sleeping. Khufu gets up and prepares to leave. She says that she needs to go work with the other slaves and that if he has time, he needs to go talk to the tribe leader about their move, since the Dark Tribe has their eyes on the protagonist, and if they do not move, he will be in danger. Yuanyi tells her that it is fine. As soon as she leaves, the protagonist speaks to the system, saying that if he leaves that tribe and Tinghuang notices that he has disappeared again, she might jump to the wrong conclusions. However, Khufu seems very determined about moving, and if they do not move, it is possible that all the affection value he has worked so hard to build up will be destroyed completely. Doubting says that apparently they have a huge dilemma to solve. Yuanyi asks why women are so difficult to deal with, but the system tells him to stop complaining because obviously he will be able to think of a very good solution. Yuanyi begins pacing back and forth, asking himself what he should do. He thinks that the matter is being decided the wrong way and that he needs to meet with Khufu and discuss it again, since moving is something complicated and has to be planned very carefully before taking action. Meanwhile, outside the tribe in the fruit orchard, Khufu is picking some fruit, and Tianrui is only peeking from afar, saying that this is the day he will make her pay attention to him. He opens his system, thinking that first, he needs to get some good clothes to make a good impression on her. He chooses to buy a pearl outfit. As soon as he uses the pearl set, he gains 100 charm points for 1 hour. Khufu is still focused on picking her fruit until he appears and calls out to her. He says that carrying so many fruits is probably too heavy and offers to carry them for her, but Khufu does not like that very much and keeps thinking about who that guy is because he has put so much oil on his face that it looks like a mirror. She asks who he is, saying that the work is for the slaves, and if even that is going to be taken from them, then they will have nothing left to do. She tells him to go live his own life and stop worrying about her. Tianrui becomes a little confused, thinking that that outfit has a charm bonus, and even so, it has no effect on her at all. He thinks that maybe she is shy and that is why she is rejecting him, because even without dressing up, he is already an 8 out of 10. And after adding the buff, he must have become way too charming. Yuanyi arrives right at that moment and notices that he is talking to Khufu, but thinks that he will not let that happen. The protagonist activates green tea mode and calls out to Khufu. He walks up and with tears in his eyes says that apparently she already has someone helping her, so she probably does not need him anymore. Tianrui gets a little irritated asking why that idiot side character is there, but thinks that he does not need to worry because that guy is just a loser and poses no threat. The protagonist keeps using emotional manipulation and turns around saying that he will not interrupt the two of them anymore and that if he had known that would happen, he would not even have gone there because he has worried for nothing. Khufu asks her master to wait and says that she has already finished picking the fruit and will go back with him. The system says that it has detected an increase of 0.1 in her affection level and that he has gained another 5 points. Yuenyi picks up the fruit basket and says that if she has already finished, then he will carry it and dinner is her responsibility because he feels like eating something really delicious. Khufu smiles at him and says that it is fine. She will put a lot of effort into it. Yuenyi laughs while thinking that this is exactly what that jerk deserves for trying to steal his Khufu. Because he does not care who the real protagonist of that story is, he is going to take everything. Tianrui cannot believe that he has been rejected like that. On the way back, Khufu tells the protagonist that from then on, he needs to pay more attention to that man because he knows she is a slave and still goes to talk to her. And that is taboo. So that person definitely has ulterior motives. Yuanyi smiles and says that he understands. Embarrassed, she asks him not to act like that again. The protagonist becomes confused and asks what kind of way she is talking about, but she just tells him to stop. Because if other men see him acting like that, they will only despise him even more. Yuanyi thinks that she is probably referring to his green tea act. He places his hand in front of her and looks directly into her eyes, asking if she is not so afraid of him anymore. Khufu remains worried about her master and asks what he is talking about and tells him to stop, because it would be very bad if other people see him acting like that. But the protagonist says that he does not care how people look at them, because the people of that tribe already despise him anyway, so it does not matter. What truly matters to him is that she can be happy by his side. Khufu looks away and says that he is the master and she is only a slave, so he does not need to worry so much about her. But the truth is that she is thinking that he has really changed, and maybe it is because of that blow he has taken to the head. Yuenyi thinks that in the original story, Khufu is a character who needs to be won over, but he keeps looking at her and says that she looks very beautiful when she smiles and asks her to smile a little more from then on. That makes her so embarrassed that she says it is better for them to return home so they can eat. He offers to cook, saying that he will prepare a delicious weasel soup. Khufu is surprised, seeing that he is being very helpful for no apparent reason. Tianrui is still watching everything from afar and says that if it were not for that idiot NPC, he could have done well. And now he is a little afraid that because of Yuanyi, Khufu might no longer fall in love with him. Apparently, Yuanyi really is another transmigrator. Scheiding says that if that is really the case, then things have become much more complicated and asks the host to act as quickly as possible, because if Yuanyi manages to conquer the 7 women before him, then they will be in serious trouble. Tianrui says that winter is already getting close and some women from the Dark Tribe need to enter relationships. His system asks what the plan is. Tianrui explains that when he is reading the original story, there is something about a disposable NPC, and she is from the Dark Tribe, and if he can give that woman a little hope, then she will do any kind of dirty work for him. He just needs to ask her to pick up a knife and eliminate Yuanyi, who should have been eliminated in 3 pages, and then the story will return to the correct course. Meanwhile, in the protagonist's house, the food is already on the table and he asks Khufu to try a little of that soup, but suddenly something comes crashing in and destroys part of the roof. The protagonist is startled and looks back, managing to dodge the first attack. The woman keeps attacking and Khufu steps in front to defend her master, but ends up with some injuries on her arm. Yuanyi grabs her and asks if the wound is very deep, but she ignores the question and asks if that is the woman who has marked her master. And the woman interrupts, saying that that night he must be eliminated, because if that happens, she will have a way to survive. A short while ago, Tianrui meets with her and says that if she eliminates Yuan Yi, then he will make her his slave and give her an identity. With that, if the human tribe or the beasts accept her, she will become free from the dark tribe. The woman asks if he is trying to deceive her, but Tianrui only smiles, saying that he is asking for a favor, so why would he lie? She charges again using all her strength, but Khufu steps in front once more and blocks the attack. However, she ends up taking a kick and is thrown away. Yuen, who is still observing everything, notices that a member of the dark tribe has just appeared there, but upon seeing Khufu getting hurt, Yuan Yi becomes furious. He rushes forward and the woman is startled. She cannot dodge and takes the attack directly. The protagonist's strike sends her flying several meters into the air, causing intense pain throughout her body. He keeps a serious expression and advances again, hitting her and making her crash hard onto the ground. Yuen watches all of that and feels excited, wondering how many more surprises the protagonist is hiding. Yuan Yi remains focused only on attacking that woman, and Khufu cannot believe what she is seeing, as she never imagines her master could fight like that. With a serious expression, Yuan Yi asks who sends her there, but the woman refuses to say anything. The protagonist attacks her again, saying that if she is not going to talk, then there is no reason for her to keep living in that world. Khufu just sits there watching everything. The protagonist walks up to her and holds her hand, asking if she is hurt anywhere else. But Khufu is so surprised that her first question is when he learns to fight like that. Yuan Yi thinks about how he will explain that, since he cannot just say he learns it out of nowhere. But the truth is that he enters the system shop interface and buys a complete cultivation method. He tries to cover it up by saying that when he is captured by the Dark Tribe, in desperation he meets a wandering outsider who teaches him a few tricks. Khufu asks what he means by a wandering outsider and thinks that maybe her master is a prodigy. Yuen moves a little closer to listen to the conversation and cannot believe it is possible for him to learn that from a wandering outsider, because even the weakest member of the Dark Tribe still requires at least a second-level warrior to fight against. Besides that, the movements he shows are not something that can be learned just out of nowhere. She also analyzes Khufu and thinks that although she is injured, the potential within her body is limitless, and apparently the Neidan inside her is sealed. Yuen thinks that she has only passed by to have some fun, but does not expect to find so many interesting things. Suddenly, the tribe leader appears with two guards and asks what just happened there. The protagonist explains to his uncle that a member of the Dark Tribe infiltrates that place with the intention of eliminating him and his Khufu. The guards look at the woman's body and ask if it really is the Dark Tribe, and the tribe leader questions how they dare to enter that place. The guard who checks the body says that the woman is indeed dead. Sufu asks who manages to eliminate her, and the protagonist says it is him. The leader cannot understand how he manages to face someone from the Dark Tribe, since before, he can barely lift a bucket without getting scratched. Yuan Yi tells his uncle that this is not the priority right now, but rather figuring out how they infiltrate the tribe. Completely focused, he thinks that this is definitely Tianrui's doing, since he meets that idiot earlier. And since Tianrui does not want to be obliterated by the main system, he will obviously act first. Khufu tells Zufu that she is afraid there might be a traitor within the village, and maybe that person brings the Dark Tribe member there. The tribe leader says that winter is approaching, and logically the Dark Tribe should be focused on hibernation, unless someone promises them great benefits. Shufu asks if Yuan Yi offends anyone recently, but the protagonist questions how that is even possible since no one takes him seriously. Yuan Yi realizes that the tribe leader is actually very quick thinking. Khufu asks if the protagonist remembers what she says earlier because that man who is talking to her really has other intentions, so she is almost certain it is him. The tribe leader asks if that person really approaches Khufu privately, even knowing she is the protagonist's slave, because that person is breaking the rules. He asks who that idiot is who does that. Khufu says it is a guy named Tianrui, and apparently he is not from their tribe. The chief remembers that name because a few days ago someone with that same name comes to the tribe asking for temporary shelter. He orders one of his warriors to go there and bring him to the village. Shortly after, Tianrui is brought to the wolf tribe, and when he looks to the side, he realizes that the woman he sends has been eliminated. The tribe leader reprimands him, saying that Yuan Yi suspects that he might be plotting something, so he wants an explanation. Tianrui acts politely and speaks calmly, saying that he will answer the village chief briefly. He points out that if the protagonist suspects him, then he needs to prove it, because there is no logic in forcing a man to prove his innocence without any evidence against him. Zhufu notices that the young man is gentle, speaks calmly and intelligently, and has an extraordinary posture and does not seem like someone who would commit crimes. He says that this does make some sense. Tianrui continues confidently, saying that although he has not been there long, he hears that Yuan Yi is an idiot and a glutton who does nothing but buy more slaves. and the last time he is captured by the Dark Tribe, and somehow returns to the tribe inexplicably. He asks everyone if no one questions how he manages to come back safely. The protagonist gets irritated by that and thinks about how that guy has the audacity to accuse him. Now he is sure that Tianrui is the one who sets everything up. Yuan Yi explains that he manages to return because he knows how to defend himself well and his luck is not bad either. Khufu points out that the Dark Tribe invader is eliminated by her master, and that should prove something. The tribe leader asks if that is true and she says yes, because she sees it with her own eyes. Tianrui notices the mark on the protagonist's neck and shouts for the village chief to take a good look, because there is a mark from the Dark Tribe on his neck, and even with that mark he manages to return, which is quite suspicious. Tianrui thinks that his opponent is full of flaws and has no chance of fighting against him. Yuan Yi thinks that originally he only wants to persuade Khufu to stay away from Tianrui, but now that will be very difficult to explain, and continuing the argument will only complicate things further. The protagonist tells his uncle that originally he wants to clarify that matter a long time ago. He and Khufu are planning to move to Yangshan to avoid the Dark Tribe. Shufu is surprised by that, and the protagonist continues explaining that he is indeed marked and only escapes because he risks his life. And if he stays there, the woman who marks him will find him sooner or later. And maybe that attack is just a warning, so he has already decided and will move tomorrow morning. Shufu tries to convince him otherwise, saying that the protagonist grows up in that tribe and has no reason to leave, and asks if he has thought about how he will survive if he leaves. Yuan Yi remains firm and tells his uncle that he has already made his decision, since he does not know who sets him up, and everyone there does not believe that he is a victim, so he is truly disappointed and does not want to keep trying to prove his worth. Tianrui gets angry at that and steps forward, shouting that he will not allow him to leave. He thinks that he has not yet made contact with Ting Huang, and if he loses Khufu as well, then his few days as a transmigrator will be a complete failure. Shufu becomes confused and says that if they want to move, Tianrui has nothing to do with that. Tianrui explains that Yuan Yi's issue with the Dark Tribe has not been resolved and he may be trying to move to escape punishment. He also points out to the chief that he probably knows the dangers of the Dark Tribe, so they cannot allow a hidden threat to roam around the village. The protagonist tells Tianrui that just as he has no evidence to accuse him, Tianrui also has no evidence to make him truly seem like an ally of the Dark Tribe. Besides that, if he is really allied with the Dark Tribe, they would not be plotting against him, and he would have no reason to eliminate that woman. Khufu keeps staring at Tianrui, becoming more and more irritated with him. Shiding appears and says that something very bad is about to happen, because he detects a sharp increase in Khufu's corruption level. Tianrui asks how that happens, and his system keeps scolding him, telling him to stop immediately and change the plan, creating one that is actually decent. Shiding says that Yangshan also has villainesses he needs to go after, so it is better for him to stop that nonsense and go straight there. Tianrui realizes there is nothing more he can do, and starts leaving the village saying that they can do whatever they want because he does not care in the slightest. Yuan Yi only watches that and thinks that at least he no longer has to worry about Khufu being influenced by that idiot. With things a little calmer, he walks up to the village chief and says that even though the situation becomes confusing, Shufu watches him grow up, and even if he may not be the best person in the world, betraying his own people and his own home is never an option. He tells his uncle that he and Khufu need to go back now to organize the move, and because of that, he would like to put that matter to rest right there. And regarding the conspiracy against him, he would also like to let that matter die there, because they will be safe in Yangshan City. Shufu only looks at his nephew and says that he truly hopes they can live in peace in the other city. He asks the protagonist to correct his bad habits and become a better and more honest person. As soon as they return home, Khufu is trying to fix a few things, looking a little upset. Yuan Yi tells her that it is already broken and asks her to leave everything alone. She tries to convince him otherwise, but the protagonist says that she never likes that place anyway, so she can treat everything that happens there as a closed chapter. He takes her hand and with a smile on his face says that they will have a new home. Still sad about everything, she asks if they really will. Yuan Yi leads her to the bedroom saying yes and that it will be their home. He asks her to go to sleep a little earlier that night, but Khufu becomes worried, asking how they can sleep with the door open like that. Yuan Yi explains that the Li family has nothing worth stealing and the only thing of value he has in his life is her. He asks if she would like to sleep with him. However, Khufu is a little hesitant. The protagonist says that they depend on each other to survive and he would never do anything against her. Besides that, they are leaving tomorrow, so it is their last night there. And she can even turn into a fox if she wants. She slowly raises her hand and holds his, saying that if he dares touch her indecently, she will finish him off. Yuan Yi says that he has never done that in all these years, so at least in that regard she should trust him a little more. The two lie down and blow out the candles. Before falling asleep, she turns to the side and thinks about everything that happens. She looks at her master, saying that if he keeps treating her well like that, then she may finally be able to live a peaceful life beside him. Yuenyi tells her that she does not need to force herself into anything, because he will always be with her. Doubting warns the protagonist that he has detected a very large increase in her affection level, rising 2 levels at once and giving him 100 reward points, which shows that he manages to turn the situation around with a single sentence. Yuenyi touches her head and asks her to think of all this as a true new beginning for the two of them, because he will never again treat her the way he used to, and because of that, he would really like to ask for her forgiveness. Khufu is so moved by that she clings to his arm, saying that everything is fine now. Yuenyi thinks that only one more star is left to complete it. Before dawn, she wakes up and feels a little embarrassed, saying that she sleeps very deeply last night. The protagonist gets up, saying that it is all right because he becomes quieter when two people sleep together. However, he needs to get up. He asks her to take care of the luggage because he will come back a little later to help her. Khufu asks if what he needs to do is urgent. Yuenyi explains that they will soon leave that place, so he needs to take care of the family registration and then prepare some provisions for the trip. She agrees and says that it is all right. The protagonist thanks her and says that he will return soon, asking her to stay there. Yuenji thinks that he feels like he has done this before, and the system thanks him for the effort. However, it points out that there are still many villainesses waiting to be conquered. As the protagonist is leaving the village, Yuen keeps carefully observing his every move. She is a little confused because he is leaving again, but he should be preparing for the move. She tries to follow him, however, just like last time, he simply disappears without leaving a trace. She returns to her normal form, not understanding when he learns that kind of high-level magic. She wonders whether it is possible that if she devours him, she might obtain an interesting technique like that. Besides that, she points out that they are already going to move to Yangshan and her injuries are almost healed. So maybe she can hitch a ride with them, since sooner or later she would have to go there to take care of some business. At dawn, Yuanyi arrives at the cave and calls out to Ting Huang, saying that he is here already. He buys some things for her. Ting Huang comes rushing over, hugging him from behind, happy that he has arrived. Before he can even say anything, she bombards him with questions, asking whether he recovers well, why he is carrying a basket full of meat, and whether he is planning to hibernate with her, since she misses him very much. Yuanyi asks her to calm down a little and tells her to go inside the cave with him because he will answer every question one by one. While walking through the cave, the protagonist says that she will enter her hibernation period soon, and he gets a little worried that she will not have enough food. That is why he makes a special trip to bring all that for her. He points out that he is from the wolf tribe and they do not hibernate, and that he also misses her very much. But the injuries he suffers are very serious, so he still needs to go out and find a doctor. Ting Huang notices that he says the word "go out" and asks where exactly he thinks he is going. Yuenyi thinks he will be able to handle things a little better this time, but apparently she is even more suspicious now. He places the basket of meat on the ground and takes her hand. He says that he deliberately chooses the period when she will be hibernating to treat his injuries, so that she can see him as soon as she wakes up. Yuenyi points out that he promises he will not abandon her and that he will keep his word. Ting Huang says that even so, she is still a little afraid of losing him. The protagonist hugs her, saying that he knows very well how difficult her life has been up to that point, and not trusting people easily is like a defense mechanism she has, so he will not blame her for suspecting him. Doubting celebrates, saying that her affection level is rising little by little and just one more push and he will make it. Yuenyi looks at her and says that at the moment, unfortunately, he is only an ordinary guy, but in order to help her break this cursed dark tribe curse, he will become as strong as possible to give her the safest life she could want. Doubting warns that it is almost there. He places his hand behind her neck and says that whenever she needs him, he will be by her side because they already have a special bond. He points out that whenever she gets a little upset, he appears, and asks whether he has ever lied to her even once. Ting Huang says that she has never seen him lie. With that, her affection level finally completes one heart. The system says that her affection level rises significantly, and because of that, he gains 80 points. However, Doubting reminds the protagonist that he cannot be arrogant in the slightest because this villainess in particular is very afraid of losing what she has, and her affection level can fall just as fast as it rises. Yuanyi keeps pampering her and kisses her on the forehead, but the truth is that he is thinking that he is a real scoundrel since he has lost all sense of limits in order to complete that mission. Doubting says that it is for world peace and survival, so he cannot think too much about what he is doing. Ting Huang asks if before he leaves they can do that again. She looks at him with a face that clearly wants it very much, and Yuanyi is surprised that she is calling him so directly to do that kind of thing. He holds her in his arms and says that there will be nothing more advanced, promising to do only a massage. At the beginning of the night, Yuanyi returns to his house and says that he is back. Kufu is happy and says that she is almost finished packing everything. Yuanyi places his catch on the table and says that apparently she really is very busy since her hair is a complete mess. Kufu starts feeling a little embarrassed and the protagonist pulls her close to his body. She asks him not to be so good to her because she's afraid she might end up falling completely in love. As soon as dawn breaks at the entrance of the tribe, Shufu goes to say goodbye to the two of them, saying that Yangshan City is nothing like that humble village. There are many people there and many curious eyes, as well as many rules. So when he gets there, he needs to be very careful with everything he does. He asks the protagonist not to think that he is being too hard on him just because he is an uncle. The village chief points out that the protagonist's parents leave early and entrust Yuanyi's safety to him. Because of that, he will not be able to feel at ease unless he is sure that the protagonist will be all right. Yuanyi hugs Shufu, telling him not to worry because everything is going very well. He thinks that his uncle always treats him very well. And apparently the old Yuanyi is so foolish that he even manages to ruin the relationship between the two of them. Shufu says that his nephew is so young, yet already acts like a true adult. He says his final goodbye and tells him that if things do not work out in that new city, the protagonist should not hesitate to come back, because they will always have their doors open. Yuanyi says that the village chief treats him as if he is one of his own sons, so in the future, when he has the opportunity, he will come back to visit. He thinks that if it were not for the care of the village chief, he probably would not have lasted long, but now it is time to leave. 2 days later, they arrive at a waterfall. He places their belongings on the ground, saying that the weather is very hot and mentions that there is a waterfall right there. He says he will go gather some firewood to make a fire and asks Kufu to go take a bath. Kufu asks him to let her handle gathering the firewood and making the fire, but the protagonist tells her to stop acting like a slave because she does not need to do that anymore since they are no longer in the tribe. He points out that now they are a family. Kufu is very shocked by that. Yuanyi tells her to enjoy her bath because he has already checked the surroundings and there is no one there. Kufu feels as if she is being loved, protected, and cared for by him. Doubting remarks that this is incredible because no matter what the protagonist does, Kufu's affection value keeps rising. He smiles, saying that someone has to do the dirty work to save the world, and pushes aside some grass around him, asking if the vegetation in that forest is not too dense. The roots beside him seem to be moving, and the system warns that there is a villainess named Ruin Lingzhu from the forest tribe who lives in that kind of environment. Yuanyi thinks that he is not planning to enter her territory and questions whether this is really that place, because he cannot possibly be that unlucky. Doubting tells his host to wait a moment while he checks the coordinates. As soon as he looks, he shouts that they are in danger, because they are already inside her territory. Suddenly, one of the roots grabs the protagonist upside down. Yuanyi thinks that he does not even have time to mention the devil before it shows up. He asks the system to confirm if this is correct because she is a yandere who judges by appearances and is not truly what she seems. Doubting says that the protagonist is correct. Yuanyi becomes worried, saying that maybe that woman will not be interested in him and that it is because of his appearance. Besides that, Tianrui is a handsome guy, while he is at best a 6 out of 10, so he is in trouble. Doubting tells him to look on the bright side since he has incredibly high charisma. Ruin Lingzhu appears, saying that she manages to capture a young member of the wolf tribe. She approaches, saying that it has been a long time since she last sees someone, and she does not even remember when the last time was, because that forest has been very quiet for a long time. Yuanyi thinks that Lingzhu is sealed by the higher-ups of the forest tribe, and the one in front of him is probably not her main body since, according to what he reads in the original story, she is sleeping somewhere. Lingzhu asks what his name is. Yuanyi thinks that a food name does not matter, and since she asks, she probably does not intend to devour him. He introduces himself and says his name. Lingzhu says that he smells very good and must be very delicious. He cannot believe that she asks his name and still wants to devour him, because that is just too pervert. Suddenly, Kufu calls out her master's name and Lingzhu notices that someone is approaching. She tells the protagonist to wait until she finds him again and simply releases him, letting him fall to the ground. Kufu manages to find him and runs over, asking what happens. Yuanyi explains that he ends up encountering the forest tribe. Kufu points out that the aura of that place is dark and oppressive and pulls him, saying that they need to quickly find a place to set up camp. Almost a month passes, and they finally arrive at Yangshan, a large city where the Sphere tribe and a small portion of humans live together. Yuanyi looks around and says that the city is quite lively. Kufu feels a little upset, saying that her hometown used to be even livelier, and it is a pity what happens. Yuanyi tries to comfort her, asking her not to be sad because he will help her rebuild her city. In the original story, after the secondary character Yuanyi is eliminated, Khufu joins the original protagonist and, with his help, manages to completely rebuild the Fox clan and becomes the new empress. He thinks that everything Tianrui does, he wants to do even better. Khufu tells her master that he seems to know very well what she goes through. He feels a little embarrassed and says that he can imagine. He thinks that he gets too carried away and now needs to do his best not to expose himself. He points out that in the past he is completely useless, so he can imagine how difficult it must have been for her to live with him. Khufu says that he has changed so much that sometimes it feels like he is not the same person as before. Yuenyi says that he is still himself, and that people can change and grow, and because of that he is a little afraid that she might hate him now. He thinks that Khufu is mistreated all those years by the old Yuanyi, so her perception becomes very sharp. Khufu smiles at him, saying that no matter what happens, the truth is that she hopes he continues like this and never changes. The protagonist says that he will no longer be that detestable person from before. However, he says that now it is time for them to keep moving, because they still need to find a place to stay. Khufu says that they do not need to look for anything because they already have a place to stay. They go to a mansion and she knocks on the door. A woman shouts that she's coming and, upon opening the door, asks who it is. But when she looks ahead, she is surprised to see that it is the princess. She is Aunt Chuan, the personal maid of Khufu's mother, truly devoted to her clan. In the original story, that woman is a great warrior. Khufu runs and hugs Chuan, saying that it really is her. Chuan thanks the heavens for finding Khufu, since she imagines she would never see her again in this lifetime. Khufu explains that after that incident, she is sold to the wolf tribe. Chuan asks if she is sold as a slave, and whether the princess suffers a lot. Khufu tells her aunt that everything is fine now, because all that suffering is in the past. Chuan looks at the protagonist and realizes that he is also from the wolf tribe, so he is probably the one. Yuanyi thinks that this is an awkward situation, since he is the useless one who used to mistreat that poor girl. Khufu introduces the protagonist as her master, but he interrupts, saying that he used to be her master but not anymore because they have become a family. Chuan becomes a little suspicious, but ends up letting it go. She calls Khufu inside, saying that she has kept her room ready for a long time, since she always hopes she would return. Khufu says that it seems her aunt never forgets the promise they make to each other. Chuan tells the princess that the Fox Emperor and Empress treat her with a kindness as great as a mountain. So if she forgets the promise she makes to the princess, she cannot be considered human. Yuanyi notices that Chuan does not welcome him very warmly. She opens the mansion door, saying that the 2 floors above ground are very modest for a princess. However, there are 2 underground floors that are quite spacious. All these years she avoids drawing attention out of fear that something might go wrong and she would never see Khufu again. But now that the princess returns, she can finally arrange the house properly. She shows the room, telling Khufu that if that is her room, then she can rest. Khufu asks her aunt if she can let the protagonist stay near her. Chuan becomes a little concerned about that. Khufu explains that Yuanyi treats her very well, so she does not need to worry. The protagonist, who's listening to everything, thinks that even though he is not the one who hurts that girl, hearing those words still makes him feel a bit guilty. Chuan eventually agrees and says that he can stay in the room next door. Besides that, the room is not arranged, so he can take care of it himself. Yuanyi says that it is fine, since he will arrange it himself. Chuan mentions that she will prepare a fine meal and serve some wine for a welcome dinner for the princess so she can wash up from their journey. Khufu apologizes to her aunt for bothering her so much. Khufu takes Yuanyi's hand and says that she will help him arrange the room, but he tells her that she does not need to do that since he can handle it himself. Khufu insists, saying that the protagonist returns her freedom, so helping him arrange the room is nothing compared to what he does for her. He ends up agreeing and lets her help a little. Khufu points out that since she is sold, she has never returned to Yangshan, and that place has changed a lot. She suggests that they go for a walk after dinner. Yuanyi agrees, saying that wherever she wants to go, he will accompany her. Doubting suddenly appears, shouting that nothing good is happening, because Ting Huang's corruption level is rising very quickly. The protagonist is surprised and asks why. Khufu looks at him and asks who he is talking to. Yuanyi tells her it is nothing and explains that he suddenly feels a strong urge to go to the bathroom, so he needs to step out for a bit and will be back soon. Yuanyi asks Doubting to teleport him to Ting Huang's coordinates. As soon as he is taken to the cave, he is surprised and asks what just happened there, since it looks like a fight is going on, and the system tells him to hurry. But suddenly, Ting Huang is thrown outside. He notices it and manages to catch her, but is also pushed back. Yuanyi asks her what just happened, but she is already badly injured and tells the protagonist that he needs to leave immediately. 3 women begin to come out of the cave, saying it is just a little wolf that showed up at the entrance. The other 2 say he is very young and smells really good. The blonde laughs, saying she did not expect to restock her hibernation supplies so easily. However, she points out there is no need to rush since they need to get pregnant first and then turn him into dried meat. Ting Huang tries to save her loved one, telling the protagonist not to worry about her and to leave immediately because he will not be able to win. Doubting warns that her corruption level is rising very fast and that he needs to do something to calm her down. Yuanyi places her on the ground and asks her to rest for a moment, saying he will handle it. Ting Huang becomes worried and asks what he is planning to do, but the protagonist says that those who hurt his family deserve a death sentence. He thinks that the ability he bought for a fortune last time can be used again and might solve this. Ting Huang realizes that he said family, which means she is important to him. The other girls continue acting arrogantly as if the fight is already won. He buys another ability called Initial Divergent Fist for 50 points. The blonde rushes at him saying he is just a little wolf and needs to be obedient, but the protagonist says she is worthless and lands a punch that sends her flying far away. The other two are surprised but angry, asking if he knows how to fight, yet they say it does not matter because it will all end there and his life is in their hands. Yuanyi keeps smiling, saying they are talking too much and that he would rather they stay quiet and simply die. He defeats the other two with ease, leaving Ting Huang completely shocked. Yuanyi says that he normally does not like hitting women, but they touch something very valuable to him, so he cannot let it go unpunished. Because, as the saying goes, survival belongs only to the strongest. He turns his back and blows the three of them up, saying goodbye and hoping they can reincarnate in another life with a little less arrogance. He goes to Ting Huang and says he will take her inside the cave and treat her injuries. She's so impressed by his display of strength, care, and protection that she jumps into his arms. Doubting says her affection level is rising faster than a rocket, reaching 4.5 stars, and that he has gained 200 points at once. The protagonist holds her in his arms, takes her into the cave, and grabs some medicine, saying it will help stop the bleeding and disinfect the wounds. He begins preparing the medicine, but she suddenly kisses him. Yuanyi asks her to wait a moment as he would like to treat the wounds before they get worse. Ting Huang says she cannot hold herself back anymore and needs to do it right away. Yuanyi becomes serious and tells Ting Huang that he already told her to stay quiet so he could treat her. So what part did she still not understand? Ting Huang does not know what to say. The protagonist takes her hand and says hibernation is coming soon, and she is still injured. So he asks if she is trying to risk her own life for nothing. While treating her wounds, he says that, during hibernation, he will visit her from time to time. Because of that, she does not need to worry about anything and just has to sleep peacefully. Ting Huang is surprised and asks if he is leaving. The protagonist explains that winter is coming and his tribe urgently needs to replenish its supplies. Once the heavy snow blocks the mountain paths, external trade will become impossible for 3 months. So, as a member of the wolf tribe, he cannot abandon his companions for personal and selfish reasons. Ting Huang becomes a little upset and tries to speak, but the protagonist interrupts her, saying that if he were selfish, he would abandon his tribe for her right at that moment, and he would also abandon her for something else in the future, asking if that does not make at least a little sense to her. Ting Huang still does not know how to respond, but Yuanyi thinks that, in his pursuit of conquering the villainesses, he himself has become a villain by lying like this. Ting Huang remains worried and starts crying, but the protagonist, with a gentle voice, asks her not to cry and to wipe away her tears because seeing her like that makes his heart ache. He opens a bottle and asks her to wait for him because he will come back to her. Ting Huang holds his arm and asks if he could at least spend that night by her side. The protagonist is left speechless and says he will leave after she falls asleep because it is very dark at night and the forest is a little dangerous, so it would be difficult for him to return. Doubting warns that her affection level is rising, and it is becoming difficult to make her accept that the protagonist needs to leave. Ting Huang rests her face against the protagonist's chest, saying that just thinking about sleeping for 3 months without being able to see him already makes her not want to hibernate anymore. Yuanyi tells her that in the future, he will take her to a place where hibernation will no longer be necessary, and all 4 seasons will have pleasant weather, so they will no longer need to be separated. Ting Huang takes a deep breath and says she will wait for that moment. Yuanyi thinks that no matter how many lies he has already told her, this time that promise is genuine, and he will take her to a better place. That is a promise. As soon as Ting Huang falls asleep, Yuanyi places her on the bed and asks the system to take him to Yangshan. As soon as he returns, he notices that there is a lot of mud on his shoe and needs to clean it quickly, because otherwise, Khufu might end up finding out. But as soon as he looks up, he realizes that she is already irritated. Khufu asks where he has been until now. The protagonist tries to play it off, saying he could not find the bathroom, so he went outside to relieve himself. While telling that story, he thinks that maybe no one could believe such a huge load of nonsense. Khufu keeps looking at him with an angry face. She thinks that he is definitely not telling the truth, but she still does not know why her beloved is lying. Still nervous, she explains that she has already prepared his room, so he needs to go take a bath and rest. Yuenyi stares and tells the system that she clearly did not believe him, but she also did not press the matter. However, he is already desperate, thinking that this situation is becoming more and more complicated because it is already hard to deal with two of them, so imagine when the other five appear. He no longer knows what to do. The system explains that once he fully conquers one of the villainesses, she will not become corrupted again. Because of that, the system suggests that he take advantage of Tinghuang hibernating for 3 months, since that way he can prioritize his progress with Khufu. The protagonist thinks that this is the only way, but he is still a little worried about Tianrui because he lost badly last time, and now that none of the villainesses have been conquered yet, he will definitely risk his life to find them, and perhaps he could also go to Yangshan. Because of that, he needs to make the villainess of that city develop some affection for him, since first impressions are the ones that last. And as long as she is on his side, Tianrui will not be a threat to him. Doubting asks if his master was not tired. The protagonist opens the door and shouts, saying that life is difficult like this, so he cannot rest. Things are hard for everyone, so why would it be any different for him? He throws himself onto the bed and says that he has been getting a little tired lately because his body is already starting to give out. He takes a look at the system to see if he can find something that can help with his recovery. He is surprised to see that there is Duji and Laoshan water for only 1 point each. He asks the system if those come with unlimited refills and says that a system really is incredible and he wants both of them. Doubting praises him, saying that he has excellent taste in drinks. He holds the 2 drinks in his hands, saying that now he just needs to drink them and get back to work. After getting everything in order, Khufu leaves almost every morning to handle matters with Aunt Chuan. Most of the time, she only returns late at night. Taking advantage of the openings she left whenever she went out, the protagonist used teleportation a few times to check on Tinghuang during her hibernation. Every time he returned, he changed clothes and put on perfume to prevent Khufu from smelling anything strange. But Khufu began to notice that he had been smelling very fragrant lately. Yuenyi explains that when he went out and smelled the stench of sweat coming from others, he started to hate the fact that he used to dislike taking baths. Since then, he had begun taking better care of himself. The protagonist thinks that maybe he said too much and that this was a mistake, but Khufu agrees, saying that he really did smell very bad before. The protagonist continues analyzing the situation, saying that just from her gaze, he can tell it is obvious that she did not fall for that lie. However, she does not ask anything, and he does not know exactly why she is so resistant to asking questions. After all, she does not believe his excuses, but since she still cannot even imagine that he has a system, there is no way for her to connect it to the other woman. Yuenyi asks the system when Kuan Yu will return to the city because it has already been almost a month. He had been planning to conquer her inside that city, but he never expected that she would go to the Phoenix tribe to see her masters. And now, all he can do is pray that Tianrui is unlucky and does not run into her along the way. Khufu knocks on the door and asks if he is busy. The protagonist is surprised, thinking that she came back early, but says he is not. Khufu explains that she has been so busy with her own matters that she ended up neglecting him a little. She says there is a festival in the city, and that she would like to take a look with him. Yuenyi is surprised and wonders why she looks so beautiful that night. But since he has nothing to do, he decides to go for a walk with her and use the chance to raise her affection level a little. He smiles and says he will just get changed, but she holds his hands and says there is no need. She puts a coat on the protagonist, saying that winter has arrived and that she made that cloak for him. Yuenyi is surprised, saying that she has been busy all day for several days, and even so, she made that for him. The protagonist hugs her, apologizing for everything that happened in the past. He thinks that even though he was not the one who made her suffer, he still needs to apologize. Khufu feels embraced and says that the festival is starting, then, with a smile on her face, calls him to go. Yuenyi looks at her, thinking that she is a poor little fox, because she had never been treated well before, and just because he gave her a little affection, she already trusted him with her body and soul. In the middle of the streets at the festival, Khufu is holding the protagonist's hand. She says there will be a parade that night, and the High Priestess will pass by on a palanquin full of flowers. Upon hearing High Priestess, he thinks that Kuan Yu has returned. Khufu continues explaining that she comes from a great tribe, is a disciple of the High Priest of the Phoenix tribe, and has an extremely high social status. Yuenyi is surprised and asks how she knows all of this, while thinking that it is a huge coincidence. Khufu explains that the matters she has been busy with lately are directly related to the High Priestess. The Fox tribe's power was sealed, and she discovered that the priestess helped someone from the Beast tribe with a similar problem recover their own power. In addition, her aunt and she contacted old subordinates of her parents who were hiding in that city, but she simply asked the protagonist not to be angry with her because of that. Yuanyi asks if that was all and also questions why he would be angry over something like that. However, he remains confused because the system had said that he should not let the villainesses know about each other's existence. Doubting explains that this restriction is only to prevent them from knowing about the relationships he has with them, to avoid one becoming jealous of another because of the collapse before he truly conquers them. Yuanyi asks if that means that once he fully conquers one of them, he no longer needs to worry, and if they meet without knowing about their relationship with him, everything will be fine. Doubting says that this situation can be understood as playing with fire because one day, if he is careless, he may end up getting badly burned. The protagonist asks the system to be a little clearer next time because for a moment, he thought he would be doomed to fail just because they met each other. Khufu says that she is arriving. Some people carrying a throne on their backs begin to pass by, and Kuan Yu appears. The protagonist thinks that the new villainess has been found. Khufu says that it is very difficult to get close to her, especially for men, because she hates all of them, and the protagonist thinks that conquering her will be extremely complicated. But that is exactly what makes things a little more interesting. The night continues, and they enjoy every moment buying food and even some hats. The fireworks begin, and the two of them start watching. Khufu smiles happily and says that this night has been wonderful. Yuanyi looks at her, sees how happy she is, and also feels lucky about it, saying that now they need to go back home. Doubting warns that her affection level is rising quickly, and another 150 points have been acquired by the host. As soon as they return, Khufu lights the fire and begins heating the water. Chuan arrives and becomes a little irritated, saying that she is a princess and already a free person, so she no longer needs to do those things, like heating bathwater, especially for that man. Khufu smiles, saying that it has already become a routine for her. Chuan approaches and wants to understand what she means by that, because if the Fox King had not been betrayed, she would be a noble princess, and a wolf man from such a small, remote tribe would not even be worthy of her presence. Khufu tells her aunt that she probably does not understand. Besides, there is already enough water so she can be responsible for the rest, and she asks her aunt to go rest for a while because a major event will happen in 2 days. Chuan laughs and tells her to admit it already because she has fallen in love with that little wolf. Khufu tries to play it off and says that back when the protagonist's parents bought her, the original plan was to find a wife for him. However, now she feels that he is alone and far from his home, while she still has Chuan as family, so she sympathizes with him a lot, but that is all. Chuan knows exactly that she is not telling the truth. However, she says that her little Khufu has already reached the age where she can judge people's character, so she needs to keep her eyes wide open because the men of this world are full of tricks. Khufu becomes a little embarrassed, but says she will remember that. Chuan gets sleepy and says goodbye, saying she's going to sleep. Meanwhile, Khufu sits in front of the fire feeling a little awkward. She continues filling the hot water and the protagonist approaches, asking what that smell is because it does not seem like the smell of soap. Doubting warns that it is a natural reaction from the spiritual energy of demi-humans. In the original story, when they get close to adulthood, they go through a phase of physical and spiritual instability, emitting an aura stronger than normal. This means that Khufu is already entering that stage of maturity. Yuanyi is surprised and asks the system if she is not only 16, but then remembers that in 2 days, she will turn 17. Doubting explains that demi-humans reach adulthood at 17, and that this is in the original story, so how could he have forgotten it? Yuanyi thinks that now he understands why she has been acting strangely everywhere. What is happening is that her energy is unstable, making her emotions more intense, and causing her to feel restless. He thinks that this first stage of maturity usually lasts 1 week, and that, according to common demi-human knowledge, this period requires rest, care, and emotional control so that her spiritual energy does not fall out of balance. The system says that is exactly right and that he hit the nail on the head. But he becomes a little confused, asking the system how he has time to act like a righteous man. Because even if he wants to help her, this kind of situation requires great care. He continues looking at her, wondering if she would really accept any help because he could end up ruining everything and leading her straight into corruption. The system asks what he's going to do and tells him to make a quick decision. Khufu looks at the protagonist and asks what he is so distracted about, telling him to go take a bath already. She thinks that ever since she returned from the temple, she has been feeling a little restless because her heart will not stop pounding. Her energy seems unstable, and she always wants to do something, which is a little strange. The protagonist approaches her, saying that there is something he really wants to talk to her about. Khufu asks if they can talk about it after the bath because the water will cool down quickly in winter, and that makes her worried that he might catch some kind of cold. The protagonist keeps speaking and says that in 2 days it will be her birthday. She is surprised by this, and he says that no one has celebrated her birthday for all these years, so she probably almost forgot. He asks if she knew that when demi-humans turn 17, they enter their first stage of spiritual maturity. She is surprised and a little embarrassed because now everything makes sense. The protagonist continues explaining, feeling awkward, saying that she is already starting to emit a stronger spiritual aura. To others, that can cause an intense feeling of closeness, and he asks if she understands what he is trying to say. He touches her shoulders and looks directly into her eyes, saying that he was a piece of shit to her before, so he does not know how she sees him now. Because of that, he does not want to force anything or take advantage of the fact that she is going through a difficult moment. He would like to make things very clear with her. He says that if he does anything carelessly while she is in this unstable phase, it is very likely that he will end up creating a spiritual bond with her because that is part of demi-human instincts. She says nothing, and he asks if she is listening to what he just said, but her eyes are already shining with emotion, thinking only that he is worried about her. She takes a deep breath and pulls him forward, hugging him tightly. After the hug, her legs begin to tremble, and she tells him that she had been bought by his parents with the intention of becoming his wife in the future. Yuan-Yi is surprised, but she becomes embarrassed and asks him not to look at her like that. The protagonist thinks he can feel his heart beating wildly because he has never looked at a girl's face with so much sincerity before. So he decides to give in to the feeling and hugs her back. He thinks that originally he was supposed to conquer the villainesses, but apparently he is the one being conquered by them. He pulls away a little, saying that they cannot continue like this, which surprises her. The protagonist explains that he is feeling a little strange. Khufu looks at him and says that she used to detest him and hate him from the bottom of her soul, asking if he knew that. And the protagonist answers yes. Khufu says that fortunately he changed so suddenly, and she doubted it so much that she even thought she was going crazy. Because of that, she would like to have an answer and asks if he can be honest with her. He feels impressed and in love at the same time, with all the memories of the two of them together, and begins to wonder how he could possibly not be honest with her. Doubting says that an intense emotional fluctuation has been detected coming from Khufu, so he needs to be careful with what he is going to answer. Yuan-Yi thinks that he initially approached her with the intention of conquering her, but he can no longer say what the difference is, because her smile makes him feel like a complete and happy man, while her sadness makes him feel completely destroyed inside. Because of that, he can no longer distinguish whether he is truly fulfilling his mission or whether the fact that he can no longer distinguish it means that he is completely in love with her. Yuan-Yi hugs her tightly, making her feel even more loved. Her legs keep trembling and she can no longer hide her emotion. She says that both her heart and her trust do not belong to just anyone because they belong only to one person named Yuan-Yi. The atmosphere between the two becomes silent and deep, and they spend the night talking, taking care of each other, and strengthening that bond. Over time, after Khufu finally calms down, the system congratulates the protagonist because she has been fully conquered and her affection is complete. Because of that, he receives a reward of 1,000 points. The system rises to level 2, and more items are unlocked in the shop. Meanwhile, at the city gate, Tianrui feels something very strong in his heart, and his system warns him that the villainous Khufu has been completely conquered. He becomes desperate, wondering what he should do now. Shiding explains to him that he needs to take the initiative and capture one of the villainesses, accumulating 3,000 points and unlocking level 6 of the system shop. With that, he can obtain an item that forcibly reverses the villainess's affection level. He asks his system to teleport him immediately to Kuan Yu's location, because he needs to conquer her right away. Meanwhile, in bed, the two of them were still lying down, resting after a long and emotional night. Khufu slowly begins to wake up, and when she looks to the side, she feels a little embarrassed, asking how long the protagonist has already been awake. She quickly gets up, saying that she and her aunt need to take care of some things because tomorrow is her 17th birthday. Yuan-Yi smiles and says that this means he will wait for her at home. She tries to say something but feels too embarrassed and runs off, saying that she's going back to her room. As soon as she leaves, he lies down again and takes a deep breath, saying that he finally managed to conquer one of the villainesses. But technically, she was the one who conquered him. With a smile on his face, he says that despite everything, that world is not so bad after all. But his system shouts at him, telling him to get up immediately because something is wrong. It managed to detect that Tianrui's system has arrived in the city. The protagonist is a little surprised and asks how it managed to detect that. His system explains that, since he conquered one of the villainesses and rose to level 4 all at once, Doubting can now detect the movements of the other host system. Yuan-Yi thinks that bastard is probably there to try to conquer Kuan Yu, which means it is time to act and he needs to stay right on that guy's tail. He asks his system to teleport him to her location. As soon as he is taken there, he notices that someone is approaching. Tianrui is already irritated, saying that no one will let him in no matter what, and asks what kind of nonsense that is. Scheiding explains to his host that Kuan Yu is someone who despises every kind of man, so forcing an approach like that will not work. The protagonist continues only observing, and Tianrui remains irritated, saying that the other transmigrator is there doing well with the mission, while he is always getting screwed everywhere. Scheiding tries to calm him down, telling him to stop being so irritated because they need to think about how to solve this situation. Tianrui says that Kuan Yue has some scars on her body, so maybe, if he can remove them with his scar removal cream, she might accept him. Yuan Yi, who is watching all of this, thinks that, from the looks of it, it really seems impossible to approach Kuan Yu as a man, and Tianrui probably had the door slammed in his face. Doubting asks what they should do, because Tianrui's system is much better than itself. Due to the fact that he is the true protagonist, sooner or later he will think of a better alternative, so they need to act quickly. The protagonist thinks for a moment and asks his system if it has any pill or potion that can change genders. Doubting explains that the current level of the shop still does not have that kind of item, but it does have a recommendation. It shows an ability called Gender Transfiguration, which costs 100 points, and says that the ability will last 50 minutes and will make him be seen as a woman. Yuanyi asks if he could at least see how he will look in other people's eyes, but his system says no. Yuanyi is not happy with that, saying that he does not have a good feeling about this ability. His system says that it will always be by his side and will not do anything to harm him, asking if the host thinks it would recommend something that was not effective. Yuan Yi apologizes to his companion, saying that he ended up judging it wrongly, but he thinks that the duration is a little short. Before confirming the purchase, he asks what will happen when the effect ends. Doubting explains that he will return to his true form in everyone's eyes. The protagonist thinks that this really makes sense, but he would like to test it first. As soon as he buys the ability, he begins to transform. He looks at Tianrui and asks if he will be able to recognize him. Doubting says no, and the protagonist says this will be a great way to test it. He activates his ability and sees that Tianrui is looking at him, but the protagonist appears completely different in Tianrui's eyes. He's even impressed to see that Yuanyi has large breasts, but Yuanyi is not happy about it, because that guy got a nosebleed just from looking at him, and that is a little creepy. Doubting asks the protagonist to be a little more careful with his expressions, but Tianrui remains infatuated, thinking that this girl is exactly his type, and that if she were a villainess, it would be great. Doubting asks the protagonist what excuse they will use to try to speak with Kuan Yu. He looks at the guards and thinks that she is different from the other villainesses because she hates men with all her strength, but is very calm with other women. And to conquer her, he needs to make her understand that not all men are like the ones she knew in childhood. Doubting says that if the protagonist goes there as a man, his chances are zero, and if he disguises himself as a woman to speak in favor of men, that will not work either because she will think Yuanyi is just an accomplice. The protagonist thinks that she has scars on her body left from childhood, and that seems to be the only plausible justification that should not raise suspicion. He buys a scar removal cream for 5 points from the shop market and thinks that the first step is to make her feel comfortable and empathize with him. With the appearance of a woman, he goes crying to the door, asking if he could talk to the priestess. The guards ask what exactly this conversation is about. Yuan Yi continues acting and says that it is very embarrassing to talk about it, so he does not want to say it out there. The two guards talk to each other, saying that perhaps it is that again, and end up opening the door for her to enter. One of them takes the protagonist inside and asks if it is about a man, because she does not need to worry, she just has to tell everything to the high priestess since she will help find a way to resolve it. Yuan Yi continues pretending to cry and thinks that, in the investigation he had done, he managed to observe that the high priestess not only presides over ceremonies, but also offers special treatment to help women who have been mistreated by men. The first step has already been completed, and now he just needs to move on to the next one. Kuan Yu hears someone calling her, saying that a woman would like to have a conversation, and asks the woman to come in. The guard smiles and holds the protagonist's hand, telling her to trust the priestess completely because she always helps. As soon as he enters, Kuan Yu asks her to sit down and asks how she can help. The priestess also offers some tea to calm her visitor. The protagonist thanks her and thinks that this woman really is very gentle with other women. So how did that useless father of hers manage to do that to her, abandoning her along with her mother? And if it were not for that, she would not have gone through all of that. When Kuan Yu was a child, her father abandoned her and her mother in order to seek power. Her mother, whom she depended on to survive, was never able to recover and died in less than a year. Kuan Yu lost her way from that point on. At the age of 8, she was taken in by an old man from the ape tribe. As she grew up, the old man began treating her with ill intentions, and on a dark and windy night, he tried to hurt her. But she stayed strong, resisted to protect herself, and managed to escape that situation, defeating that cruel man. Sometime later, she was taken in as an apprentice by the high priest of the Phoenix tribe, leading her to the position she holds today. Returning to the present, Kuan Yu says that if she does not want to talk, that is fine, because sitting there for a while and relaxing while drinking some tea is also very good. The protagonist is surprised, thinking that she is very kind even after everything she has been through. This makes him feel even more determined, thinking that he needs to conquer her, because she needs to know that there are good people in that world. But after all of this, only 35 minutes of his ability remain. The system notifies him, warning that time is running short, so he needs to cut the useless chatter and get straight to the point. The protagonist, a little embarrassed, begins to tell her that actually this has to do with a somewhat distant cousin of hers. Kuan Yu, realizing that it is indeed about a man, becomes alert, but the protagonist continues saying that he works in a small business, and she wanted to follow him into that field. But her family says that because she is a woman, she cannot do that kind of thing. To stop her, her father even wanted to force her into an unfair marriage with a much older man. Kuan Yu slams the table, furious, saying that this is a despicable attitude because it is just business. And on top of that, within a family, so how could that piece of trash treat his own daughter that way? She hugs the protagonist in a slightly too affectionate way and tells her not to be afraid because they are in Yangshan, so she will not allow a father to force his daughter to do things she does not want to do. Because of that, she needs to go back and talk to him first. And if he refuses and maintains this wrongful conduct, she only needs to come back. Kuan Yu promises that she will take up this fight. The protagonist, who is almost suffocating, thanks the priestess, saying that he feels much better after talking to her. He extends his hand, saying that this is his cousin's scar removal cream, but Kuan Yu is a little reluctant to accept it, saying that there is no need. But the protagonist asks her to accept it. Yuanyi thinks about leaving the cream behind, and if she takes the bait, the third step will be simple, because they will know the result in a few days. As soon as Yuanyi leaves the cream, she runs out. Kuan Yu asks her to wait, but Yuanyi keeps running. The priestess looks at the scar removal cream and becomes thoughtful. While he was returning, Doubting asks the protagonist if the priestess will use the cream. He says that will depend on how great Kuan Yu's hatred for men is, but he does not think she will go so far as to reject a normal product because of something like that. The system alerts him, telling him to hide quickly. The protagonist goes behind a tree and asks what is happening. Doubting says it managed to detect Khufu's presence and that she is heading in that direction. The protagonist watches and thinks that she had mentioned she was going to meet Kuan Yu to discuss some things, but he did not expect it to be on that very day. Doubting asks the protagonist to stay hidden as much as he can, because he cannot let her see that he is there. Khufu passes with Chuan right beside the tree where he was, but the protagonist manages to hide and escapes by a hair. Yuan, who is also nearby, watches closely and thinks that the protagonist and Khufu seem to have some little secrets. This makes her a little more interested because a man with secrets is much more interesting. A short while later in the resting area, one of the maids goes to Khufu, saying that the priestess is waiting for them inside. They go inside and kneel in front of Kuan Yu. Khufu introduces herself, saying that she is humbly there to ask her to help remove the seal inside her body. Kuan Yu realizes that Khufu is from the Fox tribe and has the surname Ku, which makes her ask if she happens to be a princess. Khufu says that, unfortunately, she no longer is because the Fox tribe fell many years ago. The priestess asks if she wants to rebuild her clan, and Khufu says yes without thinking twice. The priestess says that, in other words, she basically wants revenge for what happened to her parents and her tribe. Khufu bows even lower, saying that avenging her parents is a matter of honor, so she begs the high priestess to help her. Kuan Yu says that releasing the seal is not a quick process. Quite the opposite, besides being extremely slow, it can also be very painful. She explains that she is only saying this to make everything very clear and that she does not want to take away her hope of revenge. Khufu says that it does not matter what she has to do, because she will accept it as long as her power can be restored. The priestess is impressed and asks Khufu to wait a few days so she can make the preparations, and as soon as everything is ready, she will send someone to notify her. Khufu becomes excited and thanks the priestess for what she's about to do. Meanwhile, the protagonist is trying to find some simpler option and asks the system if there is no other way to go after the villainesses without being discovered by Khufu. After all, no matter how much he uses coordinate teleportation to come and go, it is not that safe, and he can no longer afford to be careless. Doubting says that there is indeed a way, but it is very expensive and requires a monthly renewal fee. If the protagonist does not pay the renewal, it will not work. The protagonist is not very happy about this, because even in the transmigrated world, he has to pay for a subscription, and that is crazy. But, curious, he asks how many points it would cost. The system says that he needs to pay 100 points per month, and the name of the ability is Living Puppet. This ability creates a clone capable of imitating his personality and his basic movements. as well as answering simple questions from the other villainesses. In addition, the clone can handle short conversations well, but if the villainess starts questioning too much, it is possible that it will not work very well, so he needs to be very careful when using this ability. The protagonist thinks this could be a great advantage for him, so he decides to subscribe for 1 month to see how it works. Doubting counts the 100 points and activates the living puppet ability, deducting 100 points from the protagonist. With everything ready, he thinks that, after dinner, he will make up an excuse to return to his room first and use his clone to stay in his place. The system asks if he intends to go out. Yuan Yi says yes because he needs to see if Quan Yu used the scar removal cream to continue the plan. In addition, he also needs to stand guard to prevent Tianrui from approaching, because he has already begun to act as well. And in the end, he is the true protagonist, which means he may be able to think of a countermeasure to try to recover the lost time. Doubting is impressed and praises its host, saying that he has been very meticulous and intelligent these past few days. A short while later during the night, Khufu returns home and throws herself into the protagonist's arms, saying that the priestess agreed to help her get rid of her seal. Yuan Yi asks if that is serious, but Khufu senses something strange and looks into her husband's eyes, asking why he has that woman's scent on him. The protagonist remembers that he forgot to take a bath after returning from Quan Yu's house. Now, he needs to think of a way out of the mess he got himself into. The system warns that it has detected negative emotional fluctuations coming from Khufu, so he needs to think of something as quickly as possible, because even though she has been completely conquered, jealousy can still affect the progress of the mission. Khufu continues pressing the protagonist and asks if he went to see the priestess. Yuan Yi thinks that if he lies completely and Khufu finds out later, it will be much worse, so he needs to improvise. He tries to get out of it and, with an upset tone, says that he did not want her to know about that. Khufu remains angry and jealous, questioning what exactly is going on. Yuan Yi says that he only wanted to help Khufu and shows the scar removal cream, explaining that he intended to give it to the priestess and use the chance to speak well of Khufu. But since everyone knows that the priestess hates men, he tried everything to get in there, only to be thrown out without even managing to say 2 proper words. He sits down saying that all of this is very embarrassing because he is nothing more than a complete, useless fool, and it is even shameful to talk about it. But thankfully, Khufu managed to do everything without him. Khufu becomes moved and asks if he really went there for her. She hugs him, saying that she was suspecting him for nothing, and because of that, she would like to apologize. Yuan Yi thinks that his life is very difficult, and any mistake can ruin everything. A short while later, everything is quiet. The protagonist observes carefully, saying that, from the looks of it, Khufu has already returned to her room, and now it is time to use the clone. He creates a clone and orders it to stay there in the room. The clone calls the protagonist Master and says that it understands. Yuan Yi asks the clone to go to sleep and act exactly as they agreed. The clone lies down on the bed and tells Yuan Yi not to worry. A short while later, at the priestess's house, she is entering the thermal pool. She looks at her own reflection in the water and thinks that her body is dirty. She begins scrubbing herself with all her strength, asking why that filth never comes off. The voice inside her head keeps saying that she is dirty, that the places that cruel man touched are so filthy that she cannot clean them. The protagonist is hidden, watching all of this, and the system warns that it has detected the corruption level coming from the priestess. Yuan Yi thinks that she is probably remembering what happened in the past, but because she is an incredibly strong woman, she did not give in and defeated that bastard with her own hands. While Quan Yu is trying to clean herself, something falls into the water, and she quickly gets out of the pool. The protagonist asks what fell into the water, and the system says that maybe it was Tianrui. The protagonist thinks that, this time, he really got screwed. Tianrui rises to the surface of the water and realizes that he ended up directly inside the priestess's thermal pool. He thinks that he needs to get out of there immediately before she appears. But before he can leave, he is imprisoned. The priestess realizes that he is a man and, with an extremely irritated voice, asks if he does not know what kind of place that is. Tianrui tries to explain that he was only passing through, but the priestess says that there are roads everywhere, so why does he think he should pass right through her house? She calls the guards. Tianrui asks her to wait a moment and says that he will tell the whole truth. The reason he is there is to bring that scar removal cream. However, he becomes irritated with his own system, asking how it teleported him right into that pool. Shiding tries to explain that it does not know either, because the teleportation takes the host close to one of the villainesses. It just did not expect her to be bathing at that exact moment. As soon as Quan Yu sees the cream, she becomes even more irritated, calling the guards to seize that man immediately. Tianrui asks his system to teleport him immediately, and he disappears in front of them. However, this makes the priestess extremely angry. She asks all the guards to strengthen the surveillance around the house, and if any man dares to step inside without her permission, they do not even need to notify her, they just need to capture him and take him directly to the dungeon. Yuan Yi, who is still watching everything, asks doubting what Tianrui was trying to do and what his real intention was. The system says that it also thinks he made some kind of mistake. Yuan Yi asks if that guy really is the true protagonist of that story, because although he does not read many novels aimed at a female audience, he has seen some short videos, and it seems like the female lead always ends up tripping and falling right in front of the male lead, making him think she is someone very special. Maybe that was the kind of cliché Tianrui tried to use. The protagonist becomes irritated, thinking that this was too cruel, but his system says it does not think so, and asks the protagonist what they are going to do now, because before they could make any move, that idiot caused all that mess and raised the priestess's corruption level. Yuan Yi says that maybe it is better to leave it alone for now, because the priestess's guard has been heavily reinforced, so it is better for them to retreat to avoid getting caught, since Tianrui probably will not dare to make another attempt that night. They return through coordinate teleportation, and he goes straight to his room. But as soon as he arrives, he hears Khufu knocking on the door, asking if he is awake. He takes a deep breath, seeing that he returned just in time. He opens the door and tells her that he was lying in bed, but could not sleep. She asks if she can come in and sit for a while, and he says yes, asking her to come in. As soon as she enters the room, she takes out a gift, saying that she bought a bean cake for him when she was coming back home, but she does not know if he will like it. This makes the protagonist realize just how incredible that poor girl is. He hugs her, saying that he likes anything that comes from her. But Khufu is not that happy. She says that the priestess had told her that the process of breaking the seal is very painful, and although she did not want to show weakness in front of the priestess, the truth is that she is a little scared. Yuan Yi holds her face and looks deep into her eyes, as if he can see through her, and says that if this is something she is determined to do, then he will accompany her. This applies to everything in the future. Whenever she needs support or just a shoulder to lean on, he will be by her side without hesitation. Those words are so deep that Khufu's eyes begin to shine. She grabs him even tighter, saying that she hopes the protagonist will be like this from now on, and begs him not to go back to being the way he was before. Yuan Yi asks her to relax, because the past is in the past. The protagonist thinks that his former self is now just a bad memory, and that, until he returns to reality, he will take very good care of her. Doubting warns the protagonist that Kuan Yu's corruption level has begun to fall, and her affection level has risen by 1 point. Because of that, he gained 500 reward points. He is surprised and thinks that maybe she used the scar removal cream, because if that is really the case, he should receive another point reward when she wakes up tomorrow morning. Khufu calls Yuan Yi to sleep. However, she begins to feel a warm energy circulating through her body and moves closer to the protagonist, saying that her birthday is almost here. Yuan Yi says that means her spiritual maturity phase is also approaching. He thinks that when this period begins, the energy of demi-humans usually becomes unstable and intense for 7 days. Khufu, with a warm gaze, asks if she can stay in his room. The protagonist smiles and says yes, while thinking that he was very lucky Ting Huang is hibernating during these 7 days because he will not need to worry about staying away from Khufu. Besides, the priestess also used the scar remover, so he does not need to worry about that either. But there is still one thing that worries him a little, and he wonders if a wolf is capable of properly taking care of a fox for 7 days. Besides, he also does not know exactly how this phase works, and wonders if it happens in stages or continuously. Doubting says that it is basically somewhere in between. This maturity period can occur both continuously and in phases. The protagonist becomes even more confused and asks it to try to explain a little better. The system explains that the spiritual instability occurs at irregular intervals over 7 days, lasting about 2 hours each time. If the protagonist manages to help her keep her energy under control, he can reduce the time by 30 minutes. Because of that, the system recommends that he buy an energy solution to give him a little more strength, because he will need it. Yuan Yi asks the system to buy a small stock, because now he has even become a little scared. Doubting explains that the cost is 10 points per bottle, but he does not need to buy it again since the item is permanent. The protagonist says he wants one and takes the energy drink that promises to give wings. He drinks it all and thinks that now it is time to take action. Suddenly, he feels something changing in his body and realizes that it is taking effect. Khufu also begins to feel a warm energy circulating inside her body, starts sweating, and her breathing becomes heavy. The protagonist asks what is happening to her. Khufu explains that it is about to begin. Yuan Yi feels a very intense aura coming from her, and his little fox looks at him, saying that tonight she needs to stay by his side. The atmosphere between the two begins to grow more and more intense, and the protagonist asks if she will hate him if he is a little firmer in helping her control that energy that night. In Kuan Yu's room, she's applying the cream to her scars, saying that she would like to see if that cream really works. Because in the worst case, if it has no effect, at least that girl's intentions were good. The next day, as soon as the priestess wakes up, she goes to the mirror and is surprised to see that the scars have begun to fade. She asks if that cream really works and calls someone to enter the room immediately. The protagonist, who is still sleeping, is awakened by the system, which says that the priestess's affection level has risen by zero point 0.5 and that he has gained 10 more points. Yuenyi says that the priestess's scars probably began to fade, and judging by the amount the value rose, she must have used only a little of the cream last night. However, with this good start, communication should become a little easier from now on. Maybe she has even already sent some people after him. One of Kuan Yu's subordinates goes to her saying that they searched the entire city but could not find that woman from yesterday, and perhaps she has already left the city. The priestess asks how she left the city if she is not a citizen of that place, or maybe she ran away with her cousin. This makes the priestess even happier, saying that girl is truly daring and that she likes women with attitude. Because of that, she asks her subordinates to search again with a little more caution. However, if they cannot find her, they should not insist. The subordinate says she will do it immediately, but before she can leave, the priestess asks her to wait and take that cream to the market to ask if anyone sells that scar remover. Meanwhile, the protagonist is lying in the courtyard of his house, saying that he heard some rumors that the priestess sent people to look for him everywhere. Doubting asks when he will take the next step of his plan. The protagonist says he will first wait until the priestess asks for more cream, and then he needs to find an opportunity to appear. The system says it is a little afraid that she will simply give up searching if she cannot find him. Yuanyi explains that those scars are a shame to her, a shame she cannot erase. Now that there is a possibility she will not give up so easily, since her personality is that of someone who insists until the end. This makes the system change its mind, saying that it understands now and that it will probably work. Khufu goes to him and says that she was talking to her aunt and decided to wait until the spiritual instability period passes. After that, she will go to the high priestess to break the seal. She says that the protagonist will have to work very hard during this period to help her. Yuanyi becomes happy and says that he is by her side, so she can call him whenever she needs him, because he will be waiting. Khufu becomes a little embarrassed and asks him to stop saying so much nonsense, but the protagonist continues praising her, saying that she becomes more beautiful every day. He thinks that he ended up letting his intrusive thoughts slip out, but he only said the truth because either way his little fox is extremely beautiful. Khufu says that when her powers are restored, she will not be able to stay with him often. The protagonist remembers that in the original story, after recovering her powers, she begins making contact with her parents' former subordinates and plans the revival of the Fox clan. 1 year later, she leads an army in a crusade against the traitors. Yuanyi continues trying to support her, saying that it is fine because he will be her safe harbor. When she needs a little rest and a safe place, he will be available to her. However, he does not know why she has that tone of an abandoned wife in the room. Still embarrassed by everything that was happening, she gets up and says that last night must have been very difficult for the protagonist because she went a little overboard, but he says that it is fine and that it was even pretty easy. Khufu feels a little more comfortable and kisses his forehead, thanking him for everything he has been doing for her. A short while later, before nightfall at the city's central market, the priestess's subordinate goes to a merchant and asks if he sells that scar removal cream there or if he knows who sells it. The merchant takes a good look at the cream and says he does not sell it, adding that he also does not know anyone who sells it. But maybe they can find some traveling doctor because there are many doctors like that in the city and he recommends that they look for them. The subordinates thank him for the tips and say they will search a little more around the area. However, they have already gone to 7 or 8 places and found nothing about that cream. If the other search groups had found anything, they would have already sent a signal. But the commanding subordinate says that this is something very important to the priestess and that, no matter what happens, they need to do their best to find it. Tianrui, who's watching all of this, says that something strange is going on because he followed them the entire day. They are looking for a person and at the same time for a medicine, and that part does not exist in the original story. Shiding asks if it is possible that someone is changing the plot of the story, but Tianrui says he was standing guard near the residence the entire time and did not see anyone suspicious. The protagonist begins moving his plan forward and goes to Khufu, saying that he bought that scar removal cream from a wandering doctor. He asks her to take it to the high priestess when she visits her later. Khufu is surprised, saying that 2 days ago the guards from the priestess's residence came to her asking about that kind of medicine, and the bottle looked very similar to the one the protagonist is holding. Yuenyi pretends to be surprised, asking if it is possible that they are looking for the person who sells that ointment. Khufu says that the guards had said they were searching everywhere, but could not find it. She holds the bottle of ointment, saying that it really does look a lot like the same bottle. The protagonist asks if she remembers the time the two of them went to the temple, because the priestess passed by them, and the protagonist noticed that she has an old scar, so he thought she might need that cream. Besides, he also wanted Khufu to leave a good impression in front of her, because when asking someone for a favor, they cannot go empty-handed. Because of that, he prepared some gifts for her to take to the priestess. Khufu becomes very happy about this, and tells the protagonist that she will have to stay for a few days before she can come back, perhaps 10 to 15 days. The protagonist holds her hand and says that no matter how long she takes, he will be waiting for her when she returns. After that, Khufu goes to Kuan Yu's residence, and as soon as they meet, Chuan tries to offer a gift, but the priestess says there is no need for all that formality. Khufu thinks that, from the looks of it, those gifts are not pleasing the priestess. However, the shape of the cream jar is exactly the same as the one the guard had shown, and if the protagonist bought exactly what she was looking for, then it might work. Khufu offers the cream to her, saying that she should accept at least that small gift. As soon as Kuan Yu sees that cream, she is shocked and asks where she got it. Khufu explains that a family member of hers bought it from a wandering doctor. The priestess, still impressed, asks if she really can give her that cream. Khufu says that is obvious, because the cream was bought especially for her. As soon as she takes the cream and looks inside, she realizes it is exactly the same ointment. The priestess says that the method to release the seal is still being studied, so she needs a few more days, and perhaps she may even be able to spare Khufu from all that suffering. Besides, she would also like Khufu to ask her family member who the wandering doctor was that he bought that ointment from. Khufu says that is fine and that she will do that. The priestess begins concentrating a large amount of energy in the palm of her hand and creates a small crystal. She hands the scarlet bloodstone to Khufu, saying that it is infused with her shamanic power and nourished with blood, so she needs to keep it with her for now. Although it can only open the first layer of the seal, Khufu needs to keep it close to her body at all times, because it will be of great use. Khufu thanks the priestess once again. Meanwhile, inside the house, the protagonist is looking at the system, seeing that there are plenty of cultivation methods in the shop, but the ones that are actually useful cost 100 points. And for now, he has no money, so he needs to hurry and conquer the priestess so he can quickly buy his survival abilities. Suddenly, the system says it has detected an increase in Kuan Yu's affection level. With that, he has completed 1 star and gained another 100 points. The system says he needs to continue with his plan, because there are only 4 levels left. The protagonist realizes that, from the looks of it, the affection level rises even without him showing his face in the early stages, which means those scars really hurt the priestess's soul. The system agrees, however, it does not know if the corruption level will reach 0 once the scars disappear. Yuan Yi says that is not exactly how it works, because in the original story it is said that the scars are only one of the wounds she has. Her father leaving, her mother dying from illness, all of those are wounds that need to be healed one by one. But either way, this is already a great start. Doubting fully trusts its host's actions and gives a report, saying that he currently has 1,657 points, and he still needs 343 more to upgrade the system shop to level 3. At level 3, he unlocks 10% discount coupons, and they can stack up to 5 times. The protagonist says that means once he accumulates 5 coupons, it will be equivalent to a 50% discount, and asks how much each coupon costs. The system says they are only 10 points each. The protagonist becomes very happy, saying that this system is now showing its true talent. Suddenly, he realizes that Khufu has already returned. She runs over and hugs the protagonist, saying that the ointment he sent helped a lot, because it was exactly what the high priestess was looking for. Khufu says that after Kuan Yu saw what it was, her attitude toward her became excellent and that she will use a better method to break the seal on her power. She was so pleased with everything that she even gave her a scarlet bloodstone. With that, Khufu can open the first layer of the seal by herself. Khufu is so happy that she kisses the protagonist on the cheek, and because of that, another point appears above her head. The system is impressed, saying that her affection level has exceeded the limit by 1 more point, and it has never seen that before. Because of this event, the reward is 500 points. Yuan Yi is also impressed, because even though she is already completely conquered, her affection level can still rise further. Doubting says that in less than 5 minutes, the system shop has evolved to level 3 and congratulates the host because of that. Yuan Yi pampers Khufu, saying that she is his lucky charm, and kisses her back, making her even more embarrassed. Khufu takes advantage of the scarlet bloodstone and tries to break through the first layer of the seal. She concentrates using everything she can, and the protagonist asks how she is doing. Khufu smiles and says it is working very well, but suddenly she feels a great pain in her chest and falls to her knees on the ground. The protagonist is startled and asks what happened. Khufu explains that it was nothing and says that she is fine, because it must be a side effect of the seal being broken, since her body has gone so long without feeling such strong power. Yuanyi asks her to rest a little and try again later, but Khufu says she wants to finish it quickly and break through the first layer of the seal. She uses the scarlet bloodstone again, and even while concentrating as much as possible, she realizes that something is not right. The protagonist also notices that things are not as they should be and asks if something wrong is happening. Khufu says that the stone suddenly stopped working completely, and Yuanyi asks if they should talk to the priestess about it, but Khufu asks him not to do that because the high priestess is preparing another more efficient method for her. Besides, she herself was too impatient and did not follow the guidance of the shamanic power inside the Scarlet Bloodstone. The protagonist asks what she wants to do then. Khufu explains that she needs to stay in seclusion for 3 days to regulate her blood and qi before trying again. During these 3 days, she cannot eat, drink water, or become agitated. Yuanyi asks her not to worry, to focus on her recovery, and leave everything else to him. The little fox says that the high priestess may come to him asking about that ointment, so if he has any news about the wandering doctor who sold it, he needs to tell her. Yuanyi asks her once again not to worry because he will handle everything, so she can focus only on herself. Khufu hugs him once more, saying that from now on, she will have to bother him more often with other things. The protagonist tries to comfort her and hugs her, saying that there is no such thing as bothering him between the two of them, because everything he does for her is of his own free will. Khufu feels safe and enjoys the hug while thanking him for being such a good man. During the night, at Kuan Yu's residence, one of her subordinates is applying the cream to her back. However, the subordinate tells the priestess that the ointment has already run out and half of the area still needs to be covered. Kuan Yu says that tomorrow morning she will personally visit Miss Khufu, so she needs to bring a gift and asks her subordinates to prepare one for her. Kuan Yu thinks that even if it is little by little, the scars really are disappearing from her body. In the courtyard of Khufu's house, the protagonist leaves the room and closes the doors. Chuan asks him how the princess is doing. The protagonist explains that she had some small problems with the process of releasing the seal, so she will need to stay in seclusion to regulate her blood and qi. Besides, he also has a favor to ask. He hands over the last 3 bottles of scar ointment and says that when the high priestess comes there tomorrow looking for her, Chuan needs to deliver that medicine on his behalf because he is a man, so it is not very appropriate for him to appear in front of her. However, he explains that those 3 bottles may not be enough, so tomorrow he will try to see if the wandering doctor who sold them is still in the city. He knows that everything he is asking is a bother, but he says that Chuan will need to look after the house for him tomorrow and stand guard at Khufu's door so no one disturbs her for 3 days. Chuan says that it must be very difficult to live always worrying about the princess. However, she asks the protagonist to rest assured, because she will take very good care of Khufu. The protagonist thanks her for all her hard work and for the help she is providing. However, he thinks that while Khufu is in seclusion, he can go check on Tinghuang's hibernation. As the protagonist leaves, he thinks that the 3 jars of cream will definitely not be enough, so it is very likely that the priestess will come back looking for more. And for now, everything is going according to his plan. If this continues, he will definitely be able to conquer Kuan Yu little by little. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.